Thank you, Danai. Thank you, Harris, for putting this on recording.
بس
ممكن نعمل ميوت يا جماعة، نعمل ميوت لو سمحتم.
صباح الخير يا دكتور عماد، صباح الخير على جميع الحاضرين.
اهلا صباح الخير، ازي الصحة محمود، ازيك يا دكتور محمود عيسوي. دكتورة نعمة الله لو تسمحي بس تحط لنا المايك بتاعك على ميوت بعد اذنك.
المفروض تكلمهم وتقول لهم صباح الخير.
يا دكتورة نعمة الله
انا كلهم بيقولوا صباح الخير السلام عليكم كده.
لا تحطوا على ميوت لو سمحت، تحطوا على ميوت بعد
صباح
اذنك.
الخير، صباح الخير جميعا، صباح الخير.
اهلا وسهلا، اهلا وسهلا.
صباح الخير جميعا. منصة محافظة المنيا ياسمين الطحاوي.
اهلا وسهلا، اهلا وسهلا.
صباح الخير انتصار الحجازي، منصة محافظة السويس.
اهلا وسهلا. هنحط كله على الميوت يا جماعه، هنكتفي بالسلام والصباح الخير على الشات بعد اذنكم، عشان ده هنبدا حالا دلوقتي، وعايزين نكون كلنا في تركيز شديد لكل المتحدثين. مايكل، we start at 11:05.
Right, yes.
Okay, so we have 2 more minutes and that's it. 11:05 exactly sharp, we start. أرجو إن حضراتكم هتشوفوا إنه في كلمة interpretation اللي هي ترجمة، شكل الكرة الأرضية كده تحت على اليمين، عشان هيكون الحديث طبعا باللغة الإنجليزية لكثير من المتحدثين، فلو سمحتم كل اللي يفضل الترجمة العربي يحط على الترجمة، يضغط على الترجمة ويختار اللغة العربية. For those who are going to use the English, you can also hit on the interpretation down there on the right side and choose English, because some will be speaking in Arabic and some will be speaking in English, inshallah. Okay. Good morning, good afternoon for some of you, and welcome to this very special event, the Arab Mediterranean Civil Society consultation for the preparation to the COP27, the COP that is going to be held in Sharm el-Sheikh in November 8 to 18 of November. The dates have been just changed just today or yesterday. It is going to start on Sunday on the 8th of November. A Mediterranean region in itself, it's a hotspot. It's a place where we have real climate crisis. A region that is unique in everything, historically, culturally, environmentally, politically, and when it comes to climate change, it is also unique in terms of what we are facing of hazards, risks, and also challenges. The Arab Mediterranean people are meeting, and civil society are meeting for the first time. It's a very special moment for those who are working in the field of climate change. This is the first time that we organize it this way. And we have in the region in this Arab Mediterranean region, we have two COPs coming. We have the COP in Sharm el-Sheikh, and then in 2022, and then we have in 2023 in the United Arab Emirates. So we have chance to face and to deal and to put our voices in front of our leaders to make things different. Everyone is talking about that business as usual is not going to work, but we have to join hands as civil society and also with our governments to make it different. So I'm glad to be with you today and to join my friend, old friend, long time, now more than 30 years. I think we can celebrate 32 years of cooperation and collaboration between me and Professor Michael Skoulos in moderating this event. And I know that we have also very distinguished speakers today. We will try to be as much as we can meeting the time that we have in the agenda. And you have the agenda. I have to thank everyone who registered for the meeting. I know that the number has exceeded the 300. Until now, we have more than 112 people are already there. So we have also participants from the different countries, maybe a little bit more from Egypt, because we are the country that is going to host the COP. But I would like to finish here by welcoming all of you and wish you a very fruitful event. And I give the floor to my friend, collaborator, Professor Michael Skoulos. Michael, you have the floor.
Thank you, Ahmad. Thank you. And I would like to welcome everybody, Your Excellencies, ladies, gentlemen, dear friends and colleagues from the entire Mediterranean. Welcome. As Ahmad said, I'm Professor Michael Skoulos, the chairman of the Mediterranean Information Office for Environment, Culture and Sustainable Development of MIO, which is the major Mediterranean federation of 133 NGOs on environment, culture and sustainable development, and co-chaired with me by Professor Mohamed Ftouhi from Morocco. Today, I have the great pleasure and unique privilege to co-organize together with the Secretariat of RAED and Ahmad this first of a series of online events to provide the opportunity to the participating members, NGOs of our networks in the run up to COP27 for three reasons. One is to provide information about the most recent key policies, policy developments on climate change in the Mediterranean. Second, to share some additional knowledge and some results of the ongoing research and problematic on the big challenges we have. So it is to better understand the issue. And third, to collect your views from all our members in order to shape to formulate our position paper and our position that we will present to the COP. Further, more to agree climate action course, ambitious, but at the same time realistic under the current conditions. And these are the key objectives of this meeting. Please we'll have more than 1 hour for discussions later on, but everybody could ask for the floor. We have interpretation English, Arabic, but you have to be short and to the point. And I'm sure that we will collect from this first meeting enough for the planned next meetings. We want to present a model process in approaching the COP. As Ahmad said, is a COP in the south of the Mediterranean and in the Arab world. I remind you that we had already one in Morocco, in Rabat. This is the second in this region, and the one of 23 in the United Arab Emirates. I think it is a unique opportunity to show the strength, the understanding, and the true contribution that our organizations could offer in the common goal on overcoming the difficulties for that climate change, and particularly under the current difficult conditions internationally, it will be, possible through our action. Without taking more time, I would like to welcome, unfortunately, His Excellency, the Secretary General of the Union for the Mediterranean, Mr. Nasser Kamel couldn't attend, but we have his recorded message, and I would like to have this message first, starting with this.
Dear friends, yes, dear friends, let me start addressing you as friends, unlike what I would normally say in the kind of occasion we are covering as an official organization. No excellencies. Today, just dear friends. And this is not about protocol. It's about the most crucial step ahead we need to do together, and I thank the Mediterranean Information Office for Environment, Culture, and Sustainable Development, as well as Ra'id, for giving me the chance to say a few words. In this series of meetings you are going to have today, you will reflect on the challenges posed to our region by climate change and environmental degradation, so I will not describe them. We are all aware, and I would limit myself to recommend that you get familiar with the first UFM-sponsored scientific report on climate change in the Mediterranean, the so-called MEDEC report, or MAR 1, that you can also find, of course, on our website. Instead, I'm going to talk about friendship and alliances. For too long now, climate negotiation and climate action have been slowed down by the perception that all the actors, each one opposite interest, were in the end enemies. In another world, civil society, government, business, finance perceive themselves reciprocally as competitors. But we are not, and we need to join hands. First, it took a recent swift evolution in economic science to have both finance and business understand that a transition towards sustainability is not a burden to a performant private sector, but rather a booster of growth. This is, for instance, the reason why the EU calls the Green Deal a plan for growth. This is also the reason why international finance is aiming at turning their portfolios upside down and very quickly in order to back mainly sustainable investment. And this is helping in overcoming an extremely dangerous break to the change we all need. Second, it also took a rapid change in perception by both governments and civil society to understand that one is nothing really without the other. Rightly, people in the streets protested to demand coherence and courage by governments in climate action and negotiations. But maybe we were all wrong by easily conceding to a thought that is simply not true. Climate is a big problem, and we all thought on both sides. So it is up to the big guys, UN or president and minister, to solve it. But this is simply not true. What do big ones do? Pieces of paper? Nothing more? Treaties, laws, fiscal incentives that impact nothing on reality, unless they are a way to facilitate the real change we need, the only change that really impacts the ecosystem and society, the change in our day-to-day lives. Even if we produce the best agreement in history, it would be meaningless if it wasn't conceived as a service to you, the real people in the real world. So, dear friends, we need to be allied, and it is finally happening. The UFM, together with governmental and non-governmental entities, is striving to step up our presence at the next COP and in all other venues where climate in the Mediterranean is discussed. But it would be useless if it wasn't with you and for you. We need you to join the alliance, and our doors are open. We need to count on you. We need you to make your presidents, ministers, and negotiators feel that you are there to help, because without your voice, our voice, that of the institution, will count very little. So, dear friends, dear allies, join us, help us. It is about our future. Thank you very much.
As you all understand, His Excellency Ambassador Kamel, the Secretary General of the UFM, gave us a strong and warm welcome for our meeting, but also for the joint efforts, as allies. And this is important. And this is important also to be translated in our policies at not only at regional level where we act, but also at national level for each one of us in his or her country. Today is a day off, a holiday in Belgium, which is why we do not have as planned a welcome statement from the EU DG Klima. This is the message. The message is that they are also following and supporting what we are doing. Without taking more time, I would like to welcome Mr. Julien Letellier, representative of UNEP-MAP. He will address the close collaboration between MIO and RIDE and UNEP-MAP in meeting common goals and objectives. This is a significant message to convey to our national and local NGOs as well. So I would like to kindly ask Julien to take the floor.
Thank you very much, Professor Skoulos. Distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues. On behalf of Mrs. Tatjana Ema, coordinator of the UNEP Mediterranean Action Plan, it is an honor to participate in this civil society forum aiming to prepare the position of Mediterranean and Arab NGOs in advance of the UNFCCC COP27. I would like to applaud this initiative undertaken by long-standing partners of UNEP-MAP, simply because we are convinced that the voice of Mediterranean and Arab NGOs must be heard at COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt, in November 2022. Through the commitment of Professor Skoulos and Dr. Adli, MIO, ECSDE, and RAED are both official MAP partners. They are strongly involved in the implementation and follow-up of the Mediterranean Strategy for Sustainable Development, one of the key achievements of the Mediterranean Commission on Sustainable Development, which is the multi-stakeholder advisory body of the contracting parties to the Barcelona Convention, acting as a forum for experience sharing and peer learning. The Mediterranean Strategy for Sustainable Development translates the Global 2030 Agenda and Sustainable Development Goals at all levels in the Mediterranean Basin, acknowledging the important role of the civil society in terms of implementers and supporters. And the MCSD include an overall objective on climate change as a priority issue for our region. UNEP-MAP recognizes the expertise of Mediterranean NGOs, support their initiative, and encourage their participation in our activities. Mediterranean NGOs are also represented on the MCSD. Partnership with NGOs also support capacity building and technical assistance activities towards the implementation of the Barcelona Convention to fulfill the vision of a healthy Mediterranean sea and coast that underpins sustainable development in our region. Civil society organizations are key actors and part of the solution to achieve the SDGs thanks to the collective effort in collaboration with other stakeholders. Ladies and gentlemen, the Mediterranean is a hotspot of climate change. Our region is impacted by the triple planetary crisis of pollution, loss of biodiversity, and climate change. According to the latest IPCC report, dangerous disruptions are happening across nature. And what we are observing in the Mediterranean region and countries echoes the IPCC's global findings. Taking the pulse of the Mediterranean through rigorous monitoring has been one of the core functions of the MAP Barcelona Convention system since its inception 45 years ago. Two recent reports sponsored by UNEP-MAP or supported by UNEP-MAP encapsulate what science says is happening in the Mediterranean basin. First, as the most comprehensive regional assessment of its kind in a decade, the State of the Environment and Development in the Mediterranean report, SOED, shows that the Mediterranean is not on track to achieve the SDGs by 2030. Pressure on ecosystems from human activities and economic sectors are exacerbated by climate change and will lead to irreversible environmental damage. Secondly, the first Mediterranean assessment report, MAR1, released by the Network of Mediterranean Experts on Climate and Environmental Change, MEDEC, a science policy interface that UNEP-MAP and the UFM are supporting together with other partners, points to far-reaching environmental and socio-economic impact of climate change in the region. This regional assessment confirms the symptoms of the triple planetary crisis in our region. The situation is cause of concern, but there are many bright spots that provide grounds for hope and call for greater efforts from all of us. On environmental challenges covered by the UNEP-MAP mandate, progress has been achieved in policy responses and action to manage the Mediterranean more sustainably. Results are positive compared to scenarios with no intervention. However, these results have not been sufficient to reduce the most significant pressures on the environment and to safeguard the Mediterranean for present and future generations while meeting human development needs. At the COP27, which took place in Antalya, Turkey in December 2021, the parties to the Barcelona Convention adopted a set of bold decisions to act for nature and people, including the MAP Medium-Term Strategy 2022-2027. The parties officially endorsed the summary for policymakers of the MEDEC MAR1, which is also acknowledged in the Antalya Ministerial Declaration. The Antalya Ministerial Declaration provides an eloquent expression of political support to living a pollution-free legacy, protecting biodiversity, and sustaining climate stability. Prior to close, I'd like to say just a few words about the Mediterranean Sea Program, the MED program, a $43 million endeavor funded by the Global Environmental Facility with the aim of reducing major environmental stresses, strengthening climate resilience and water security, and improving the health and livelihood of coastal population in our region. The MED program will deploy more than 100 coordinated actions at regional and national level during the period 2020-2024. UNEP-MAP work with 10 beneficiary countries and with partners in the program implementation. And this MED program is also supported by the EBRD and the European Investment Bank. Just to finish, to close, UNEP-MAP stands ready to work further and to strengthen collaboration with civil society organizations, which represent allies to advance the climate agenda in our region. Together, let's act for nature and let's act for our Mediterranean. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Julien. Julien, we do appreciate the role of the Barcelona Convention. We have been key allies for the Barcelona Convention all these years. And we hope that through these big projects, you are going to involve not only the countries, but also the non-governmental organizations in these efforts, because sometimes we have this imbalance between what is expected from the NGOs and what are the opportunities provided to them. So we very, very kindly ask you in this new effort, which is absolutely necessary, that stems from the commitments of the Antalya Declaration, our role to be, as you described, very important, and provisions will be built in so that indeed the NGOs could be real partners in all these projects. And thank you once again, you and Tatiana, for your support in our work, which is, as you said, necessary. And as also Nasser Kamel said, it is a moment that states and non-state actors have to work very closely in order to overcome the challenges. Thanks again.
Okay, Michael, thank you very much. And thanks again. I join Michael in thanking Julien and Tatiana for their very encouraging speech. I know that we are in the South, we still have the challenge of mainstreaming what we decide in the Barcelona Convention and ministerial meetings in the MCSD, the Mediterranean Commission on Sustainable Development. All these recommendations, all these decisions have to be mainstreamed, and implementation, I think, is the most important thing. And the civil society is there always to give examples and models of how implementation could be done at the very local level, at the national level and regional level as well. Without further delay, I would like to make a very little change in the agenda, and we would be very happy to listen and welcome His Excellency Dr. Mahmoud Mohieddin, our climate champion for the COP27. Dr. Mohieddin has been in many positions before, a leader on issues related to sustainable development, SDGs, to issues related to over economic development, and he was for some period also the Minister of Investment. This was before until 2010, last decade. So we are very happy to have Dr. Mohieddin with us. I know he has a very busy schedule, but we were very privileged to have him with us in our consultation that we had in Egypt with more than 500 participants on the May 14th. And we are very happy to have him with us here in the opening session. Dr. Mohieddin, the floor is yours.
Right. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are today. It's a great privilege for me to join this very important meeting, which I'm considering as one of the steps towards the big events, activities to be hosted, inshallah, in Sharm el-Sheikh in November. I'm calling you from Madrid, Spain, which is again a kind reminder of what we can really be doing together to provide solutions. And to adopt initiatives and to pursue different options for what could be useful in the preparation of the COP and beyond. I just wonder if those who are leaving their microphone open to keep it silent, please. Thank you. And I hope that the translation is available as well.
Yeah, yes, Dr. Muhyiddin, there is the interpretation is okay. Please, تفضل حضرتك. You are muted, Dr. Muhyiddin. You are muted. Sorry.
Yeah, you muted me with the rest, yes. So I'm unmuting my. Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Adli. No problem. I listened to Dr. Ahmadian, and I have listened to you and to Dr. Scholas and the report just being presented now, and you are all right. I think the problems are known, and if you need to have a refresher on the problem, as described in Davos, where I participated a couple of days ago before coming here. You don't need to go beyond the chief economist report and read just the table of contents. And for the second time within 2 years, we are using the terms of perfect storm. And we know why. We didn't have yet full recovery from COVID-19 and its implications. We know that the war in the Ukraine has devastating impact on the human lives, has great humanitarian impact, but indeed it has economic implications on food, energy prices, and push many countries to the edge of debt and financial challenges. In addition to that, we don't really see the kind of global leadership that we used to see in the past when we had such global crises, unlike, for instance, what happened after the global financial crisis back in 2008, when we saw that the G20 more active, providing solutions, leading international organizations, trying to minimize the impact and the damage on the economies and societies. So as much as we can really be part of the solution, not just part of the description of the problem, and I appreciate what you are offering of help and cooperation, and you are very much right, Professor Scholas. Well, it's not just about governments and the private sector. The civil society, including think tanks, research centers, NGOs. When I'm coming here to one of the top universities in the world and in the Mediterranean, i.e. In Madrid, to explore with them how the research centers and partnerships with the civil society, governments, and private sector can mobilize finance, including through the sovereign wealth funds, in order to provide solutions to the climate agenda. So my first plea to you is basically focusing on solutions and implementation. The Egyptian presidency of the COP presented by His Excellency Sameh Shukri yesterday in Davos, and in the many interventions as well by the Minister of Environment, Dr. Yasmin Fouad. They cited the Egyptian President, President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, by saying it's about time to move from pledges and promises to solutions and actions and implementation in the field. And this is the first of 5 things I'd like really to share with you, that during the years, at least since Paris and the Paris Agreement, and in the following COPs, we have been seeing pledges, good words of love and affection to the planet and how we should protect it. And many governments and companies made very significant commitments. But at the same time, we didn't really see much. When it comes to finance, we're still stuck with with what was promised in Copenhagen back in 2009 with the 100 billion. And I would say that the 100 billion promised funding from the advanced economies to the developing economies are now just a drop in the ocean, or let me say just a drop in the Mediterranean Sea. They are not enough, even if we have them, and we never had them. The best figure is talking about 79% last year, and there are many people doubting this figure. But even if this figure is delivered, multiplied by a factor of 10, is not going to be sufficient to deal with the different challenges facing us all, including in the just energy transition. And here, issues related to implementation, delivering on the commitment are going to be very much emphasized. We'll be seeing it pushed in order to realize what have been promised. And there is a great potential that we can really work for as well. So the summit in Sharm el-Sheikh will not be a summit for more big announcements unless these announcements are reflecting projects in the field. They are not going to be a platform for rhetoric. We hope, especially the countries from the South, to be a platform for sharing solutions and celebrating some effective partnerships between governments, private sector, and the non-state actor that includes you, of course. Then the second area of emphasis, in addition to implementation, is the holistic approach to the climate agenda. It has been a mistake for years to have a kind of a reductionist approach, a minimalist approach, to reduce sustainability to mean only climate, and for climate to mean only mitigation, and mitigation to mean only carbon and carbon pricing. I'm not undermining or belittling the importance of carbon and carbon pricing. But in such complex world, with complicated problems, you cannot just assume that we can solve the world by one instrument. We need really to have a holistic approach. In addition to mitigation and providing solutions, at least in the energy sector with all of its dimensions, we need really to pay attention to adaptation. Our Mediterranean Sea is suffering from the deterioration of environment, from the plastic waste, from the threats to its shores and beaches and the coastal areas around it, from the north to the south and from the east to the west of the Mediterranean. So if you imagine that just carbon and carbon pricing is going to be helpful, yes, eventually it will, but it may not really be providing the urgent and immediate requirements for dealing with the climate agenda. The climate agenda, as well as dealing with food, is dealing with the agricultural challenges, and these are more, and water management, and these are basically to do in particular with the adaptation agenda. A holistic approach will help us to deal with the nexus of ideas to deal with the challenges of the world, including in the SDGs front, in the Sustainable Development Goals. We cannot provide solutions to climate at the expense of more people to fall into the poverty trap. Actually, the numbers of the extremely poor around the world had increased for the first time since 1998 because of COVID, and then again because of the Ukrainian crisis. The numbers are being added by close of 100 million a year during the last 2 years. So we cannot really have solutions that will have devastating impact on poverty or inequality or on gender or the opportunities for decent work. And the great news is that the new technology, supported by good finance, can provide solutions to the climate agenda, and providing as well a good impact because of the strong interlinkages between the climate agenda, energy, water, and jobs. But it's basically how we manage the transition better. And we have seen, with all due respect to all attempts to deal with the climate, that mismanagement of the transition, including in some European countries, had some negative impact on the population. We cannot just blame it on the Ukraine, because we know that mismanagement of the transition in energy had increased the price of fuel or the fuel mix in many European countries last year between March and September 2021 by more than 85%. So let's all learn from our mistakes. Great good intentions will not really solve problems unless they are guided by good science and good implementation. And the summit in Sharm el-Sheikh will be emphasizing these solutions from a holistic approach. And we don't want to create a new framework. It is what we have of the Paris Agreement, of what we have of the Marrakesh Partnership that had been there guiding our work and the non-state actors work, in addition to the accumulated knowledge that we have been having through this good mix of science and finance. My third point is basically, which is of great relevance to the Mediterranean countries and the effort that you are doing together. The summit in Sharm el-Sheikh will have an emphasis on the importance of regional cooperation. And Egypt is unique in being part of the Mediterranean, part of the Arab world, part of Africa. And I think we need really to use this effectively. And there are great regional solutions, especially when we see projects of great scale that will not be feasible unless you get this regional neighborhood and geography as part of the solution. And I'm happy to see many of the projects, including in energy, are seeing this kind of good collaboration, as we're seeing with the Eastern Mediterranean Initiative, with the natural gas as a kind of a transition source of energy. There are many good solutions. I attended a few days ago the events in Barcelona about the green hydrogen and how the regional approach could really be part of the solution there as well, including setting the standards and finalizing the offtake agreements. Just between brackets here, the commissioner from the EU, Mr. Timmermans, just a couple of weeks ago said that Europe will not be sufficient for its needs when it comes to the green, clean hydrogen. And the only way, and he did it, and he did say it, and I saw him very, very briefly and congratulated him for what he said, because it's very realistic, that the only solution is basically about partnership, diversify energy. And through this diversification, one of the major sources of energy will be the Southern Mediterranean countries. We have seen many good MOUs, memorandum of understanding being signed, including at least 6 in Egypt during the last 6 weeks. But at the same time, we need offtake agreements that will really translate these MOUs into action and implementation. You will be following up Regional Economic Commission's work of the UN in partnership with the Egyptian presidency of the COP, and I hope that you will be part of it. Some of you will be as part of the ESCWA, which is based in Beirut, a Mediterranean city. Another one will be done in Africa, which has a good number of Mediterranean countries in North Africa. And in Geneva is going to be hosting a third economic roundtable with some of the Northern Mediterranean countries, part of it. So please, I encourage you to participate in these events and activities. Number 4 is an initiative that we're doing in Egypt, and I hope that others will follow up on that by building on the experience on how to localize the experience of the COP. It's not enough just to host a good COP, and I know that my country and Sharm el-Sheikh would be a great place for hosting such COP. But at the same time, you need really to integrate the local communities and at the subnational level for that. And there will be a very good announcement soon about how to localize the efforts and activities in that front. My very final point is basically about investment, finance, and funding. I briefly mentioned the issue and the challenge of the 100 billion promised from Copenhagen, but I think it's more than that. It's about the partnership between the public and the private sector. It's about relying more on investments, not borrowing. this is not really useful at all to consider the funding to be coming from borrowing. Already developing economies and emerging markets had reached borrowing limits. And it's a great opportunity, really, for every participant to consider solutions based on investments and partnerships rather than increasing of borrowings and increasing the debt burden on the developing economies. Having said that, I look forward to your participation. Very soon, actually within hours, the portal on the COP27 is going to be available for you all. It's going to be sharing with you the priorities for the COP, and many of the activities that you already undertaken are going to be considered in there. You need to register, you need to pick your thematic day to participate in. You could be specializing in issues related to waste management, women issues, energy, just finance, sustainable cities, climate resilient agriculture, sustainable transport, and more. There's a list of themes and thematic days that you can participate in. As I said, the COP is going to be launched officially within hours, and I look forward to work with you closely from now until November, inshallah. Having said that, I'm very grateful to the opportunity. Many thanks to you all.
Thank you very much, Dr. Muhyiddin, for this comprehensive and really very encouraging speech you made. I just want to, I know you are very busy and you are going to move to another meeting, but I want to build on three things that you said, the holistic approach. The holistic approach is, I think, has to be built on not only the mistakes that we have learned from, as you said, in the past, but also that we have to take a decision at some point that business as usual cannot make it, because after all these years, we have to learn from the mistakes. And I'm happy that Egypt is going to host the COP, and the idea is not to have only promises, but to bring this promises into reality and into implementation and action. The other thing that you, Muhyiddin, yes, about the Nexus approach. We are always talking about the Nexus approach from the thematic point of view, but I would like you, Dr. Muhyiddin, to also think about the Nexus from the partnership point of view. We are always talking about, Nexus, water, food, energy, and so on. I want to think about it in a different way, and I'm happy that you are talking about the localization of the COP. This is actually what you have seen when we are establishing the platforms in the different governorates in Egypt. We are even thinking about holding at the same time lively within our platforms to have the connection between the local platforms and the COP in Sharm el-Sheikh, because we cannot take all the people from Egypt governorates to Sharm el-Sheikh. But I know that there are many things that we want to follow on what you said, but Michael also want to add something.
Yes, first of all, I would like to thank you very much indeed, because you gave the tone to the rest of the meeting. Before you leave, I would like to give you some information about what we have already in mind to bring there. First of all, it is a unique opportunity to have this COP in Egypt, because this, to some extent, presents the issue of support to the developing world, to the developing economies in the South. We are about doubling the amount of support for developing economies through all kinds of investment, and this is something that will be in our positions. On the other hand, the issue of all the holistic issues you raised, including marine litter, the WIFE, the World Energy Food Ecosystems Nexus, and the regionality, I'll come back to in a minute, are for us already there. We have very big projects, and actually will continue with support of the European Union with the plastic waste all around the Mediterranean, bringing in and creating and promoting activities, champions from all different sectors. On regionality, as you know very well, there is a pendulum from national, bilateral to regional. There is always this pendulum. It is time to understand that these two should be in parallel. And the regional activities, where all these years we try to have in this north-south interface, the importance of a region that is a north-south interface as a model for the world. So thank you very much. I think you can count on us on this particular issue, because the regionality is not only for countries, it's for the societies, it's for the understanding of the role of the civil society and organizations at all levels. And thank you very much. You raised this as one of the 5 points, and we count on your support, but you can count also on our strength, because we represent millions of citizens, and this is a voice that is heard. So thank you once again, and it is a very optimistic thing within this gloomy atmosphere that we can overcome difficulties all together.
Thank you so much. All the best. It's an honor for me to be part of this discussion today, and I look forward for further collaboration with you with this kind of practical approach and problem-solving emphasis. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Your Excellency.
احنا سعداء بوجود حضرتك معانا، ونتمنى لك كل النجاح، وربنا يقويك على الفترة اللي جاية. بس أنا متأكد وواثق تماما في قدرة حضرتك على إنك تعدي بكل الناس المرحلة دي إلى نجاح إن شاء الله.
تعاونكم وتعاونكم إن شاء الله بالتوفيق.
الله يا حبيبي، شكرا. تفضل يا فندم، تفضل. And now we will move with our agenda with a little bit of delay, but I think we all benefited from what we heard from Dr. Muhyiddin. I will give the floor now to the strong collaborator from the Arab States, Dr. Mahmoud Fathallah. He is the head of the Secretariat of the Council of the Arab Ministers responsible for the environment. And he's also he has also the Department for the Climate Change and the League of Arab States. So, Dr. Mahmoud Fathallah, the floor is yours. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Dr. Ahmed, and thank you, Dr. Professor Michel Skolos. So let me talk in Arabic, please.
Please go ahead.
السيدات والسادة، يسعدني أن أكون معكم اليوم ممثلا لجامعة الدول العربية ومتحدثا باسم الأمانة الفنية لمجلس الوزراء العرب المسؤولين عن شؤون البيئة. الحضور الكريم، إن آثار التغير المناخي على المنطقة جلية وملموسة للجميع، فقد شهدت المنطقة مؤخرا تواترا مقلقا لظواهر طبيعية كالسيول والعواصف الرملية وموجات الصقيع، وقد ساهمت هذه العوامل كلها في تراجع قدرات الدول العربية في تأمين حاجات الغذاء الأساسية، الأمر الذي ينطوي على تبعات خطيرة على آفاق النمو الاقتصادي بل واستقرار المجتمعات. ويضاف إلى هذه التغيرات الطبيعية ما شهدته المنطقة من تراكمات نتيجة الأزمات السياسية التي عصفت بها، والتي زادت جائحة كورونا المستجدة من تعقيداتها. ثم جاءت الحرب الروسية الأوكرانية لتجعل من الأمر أكثر صعوبة. ونخشى أن تؤثر هذه التبعات سلباً على جهود التحول للاقتصاد الأخضر في المنطقة، أو أن تتسبب في السحب من رصيد اهتمامها بالموضوعات البيئية. السيدات والسادة، إن انعقاد الدورة 27 لمؤتمر الأطراف لاتفاقية الأمم المتحدة الإطارية لتغير المناخ بعد أقل من 6 أشهر من الآن في مدينة شرم الشيخ في جمهورية مصر العربية يمثل فرصة فريدة لتحقيق تقدم في العمل المناخي على مستوى العالم، وبخاصة في الاستجابة لاحتياجات الدول النامية. كما أتوقع أن تكون الدورة 27 لمؤتمر الأطراف منصة مهمة لتسليط الضوء على الملفات ذات الأولوية لمنطقتنا، لا سيما في مجالات التمويل وتوطين التكنولوجيا وبناء القدرات. ونحن نثق في أن مصر قادرة على توفير كل الظروف الكفيلة بإنجاح هذه الدورة، كما أننا ندعم جهودها في هذا الشأن بكافة السبل المتاحة لنا. السيدات والسادة، إننا نؤمن بأن التعاون والتنسيق بين كافة الشركاء الإقليميين والدوليين والدور الهام الذي تلعبه المنظمات غير الحكومية في تعزيز العمل المناخي يمثل فرصة فريدة من نوعها لتوحيد الجهود المبذولة من جميع الأطراف المعنية من أجل وقف احتمالات الدخول في أزمة عالمية للمناخ. الحضور الكريم، لا يسعني في نهاية كلمتي هذه إلا أن أتقدم بالشكر والتقدير لكل من ساهم في إعداد وتنظيم هذا المؤتمر، وإلى كافة المشاركين الذين يسهمون في إثراء النقاشات في جلساته. والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. شكرا.
شكرا دكتور محمود فتح الله على هذه الكلمة، وأعتقد أنه حضرتك هيكون عندك يعني مشوار طويل ما بين شرم الشيخ والإمارات، كان الله في العون، ونستمر باستمرار في الربط ما بين ما يتم على مستوى التفاوض من مفاوضينا العرب وأيضا من البحر المتوسط لإنجاح هذه القمة إن شاء الله والقمة التي تليها، وتكون نقطة انطلاق بإذن الله شرم الشيخ لكل المنطقة. شكرا دكتور محمود فتح الله. والآن مع سعادة المستشار عمرو عصام من وزارة الخارجية المصرية ومتحدثا نائبا عن الرئاسة المصرية للقمة 27. سيادة المستشار تفضل. مستشار عمرو عصام. مستشار عمرو عصام. It seems, and I cannot see within the 173 people. I can't really know if Mr. Amr Assam is joining us, but he confirmed yesterday that he will be with us. But anyway, if he is not available now, maybe he will join later, and we can give him the floor later when he joins us. Michael, I give you back.
Okay. Thank you very much. Actually, let me also thank Mr. Mahmoud Fathallah and the League of Arab States. And point one thing, this big network of MIO, which brings, as we said, North and South together, is also an ally of the views of the South whenever these are for the common benefit to the European countries through the citizens and the organizations. And this has to be fully understood and at the same time in the best way utilized in bringing the issues and the voice and the views of the South brothers to the entire Mediterranean. So thank you very much. We worked for years close together, and we value very much your cooperation. Now I would like to move to
Michael, before you move, because it seems like Mr. Amr Assam from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, he was online, but it seems like something happened. So I wrote to him a message. He said he's logging in again.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yep. So Mr. Amr Assam, once if Harris, you will see Mr. Amr Assam joining, please let us know, because he just wrote to me and he said, I'm joining.
Professor Radley, he's joining right now.
Mr. Amr Assam. But so far we are in a good shape from the time point of view. Mike, yes, he's here. عمرو بيك منتظرينك بقى لنا دقيقتين ثلاثه. اتفضل يا فندم، اتفضل يا عمرو بيك.
شكرا جزيلا.
انا قدمتك مرتين الحقيقه بس.
شكرا جزيلا دكتور عماد. انا كنت تحت انطباع ان هتبقوا 11 بالمداخلات الافتتاحيه، بس اشكرك ويشرفني التواجد معكم. allow me back to shift to speak to say a few words in English.
اتفضل.
Distinguished participants, very pleased to join this event today on behalf of the COP27 presidency team. At the outset, allow me to extend my sincere thanks and appreciation to Raed and Dr. Ahmed Adli, as well as to the Mediterranean Information Office for Environment, Culture and Sustainable Development. We salute your efforts to reinforce and advance the voices of the civil society from the Arab world and the Mediterranean region to the global climate conversation, and particularly ahead of COP27. Extended thanks also to the other partners from the UFM, UNEP, League of Arab States, and the European Union. As the COP is happening in Egypt, the interests, needs, and priorities of Africa, the Arab world, and the Mediterranean sphere need to be at the heart of the conversation and garnered with the appropriate level of attention and engagement. The most recent IPCC reports as part of the sixth assessment explain in details the devastating impacts of climate change across all regions, including within our neighborhood. In Egypt and the wider region, we continue to witness these growing adverse impacts, particularly slow onset events, such as coastal erosion, desalination, and water scarcity and stress. Some reports estimate that with temperature increase exceeding 2 degrees towards 4, the Mediterranean region can witness 30% decrease in rainfall and warming by 20% faster than the global average. This alarming situation and projections require a whole of government and society approach to climate response, and the role of the civil society and practitioners is indispensable in this regard. In Egypt, we are privileged to have organizations like Raed and a wider, vibrant, climate-concerned civil society that can be a substantial part of the solution. Distinguished participants, COP27 coincides with the 30th anniversary of the UNFCCC as adopted and opened for ratification and accession in 1992 in the Earth Summit at Rio, and can represent a whole of new chapter is expected after COP26 in Glasgow and its Glasgow Climate Pact. The current moment can open a number of pathways for additional progress to be ushered in by COP27 and beyond. Climate change is complex, multifaceted, and multi-sectoral sphere, with a diverse plethora of actors and stakeholders. We have borne this in mind while we are developing the framework vision for the Egyptian presidency, and consequently its definition of success. And allow me to summarize this vision and share it with you in the following points. COP27 is COP for implementation. This is driven by the fact that the parties agreed about most of the rule book required to fully operationalize the Paris Agreement. The world cannot afford any more rhetoric and empty promises, but wants to see concrete deliverables that make a difference and effectively address the climate crisis. 2 weeks ago, the current and incoming presidency convened a group of ministers in the city of Copenhagen, Denmark, to consider, discuss, and reflect on the state of implementation, lessons learned, and challenges and requirements to stimulate and expedite progress. This applies on the core commitments under the UNFCCC, Paris Agreement, and most recently, Glasgow Climate Pact, such as updating NDCs to align it with the Paris Agreement, to deliver on the $100 billion USD climate finance commitment, and also on important pledges such as doubling adaptation finance, the methane pledge, and the REDD Plus on deforestation, and many others. COP27 is a COP for equitable progress on all fronts. The COP president designate is convinced that the main pillars of the UNFCCC and the Paris Agreement are interdependent, mutually reinforcing, and interlinked in many ways. Implementation is a driver for more ambition and action, and thus further credibility to the international climate system and climate agenda. We want to see more progress on mitigation through updated indices and the new work program on mitigation. We want to see progress happening through the Glasgow Sharm el-Sheikh work program on adaptation and the new global goal on adaptation. We are keen to see a breakthrough in the discussion around loss and damage, particularly financing the activities required to avert, minimize, and address loss and damage, as well as the full operationalization of the Santiago network. Equally important is the robust boost required with regard to means of implementation, namely finance, including through accountability vis-à-vis the existing commitments and pledges, as well as the new collective and quantified goal on finance for post-2025, technology and capacity building. Since this COP is happening in Africa and in the Middle East, it is once again self-evident that without proper support to these means of implementation for the developing world, a big part of the climate agenda will remain a theoretical construct. Just transition should be a cross-cutting theme in all these critical discussions. Major economies and emitters at G7 and G20 need to carry the biggest part of the heavy lifting and lead by example, guided by principles of equity, common but differentiated responsibilities, and respective capacities. COP27 is a COP that should be guided by best available science. COP27 is privileged to happen during the year of the 6th assessment report by the IPCC. From what we've seen at the report on risks, adaptation, and vulnerability in February, and on mitigation in April, the situation is pretty bleak, and that action at scale is required urgently and immediately, as the adverse impacts are already in motion in all regions and across all sectors. Finally, COP27, like any other COP, is a party-driven negotiation process. However, we believe that serious talk about climate change, and particularly implementation, requires a credible, frank, inclusive, and meaningful dialogue with all stakeholders and non-state actors. Banks, MDBs, farmers, workers, indigenous and local communities, women groups, youth, civil society, scientific and research community, and many more. Parties are duty bearers, yet non-state actors are also a big part of many answers. We want to see a COP where all this wide range of stakeholders are present, vocal, and holding governments to their words and promises, and seeking potential for new partnerships. For these reasons, unlike today, we are keen to seize every opportunity for fruitful engagement with our partners at the civil society inside Egypt and abroad. Distinguished participants, I want to conclude by saying that COP should also be a transformative moment in the host country itself. Few highlights in this regard. A few days ago, Egypt launched its National Climate Change Strategy 2050. Egypt in very few weeks should unveil its updated indices. Egypt is launching its first climate national dialogue for consultations with civil society and stakeholders. Egypt published a pioneer vision on gender and climate change on the sidelines of the most recent Commission on Status of Women in New York. Egypt will continue to promote and support the widest possible activity at the level of awareness and advocacy by universities, youth, civil society. As we speak, renewables constitute 20% of Egypt's power generation and expected to exceed 42% by 2035. With adequate, sustained, and accessible climate finance and investment, the additional potential for continuing to decarbonize the Egyptian economy can be a trendsetter. I want to conclude by saying and by highlighting the challenging nature of the global geopolitical situation. Rearrangements of priorities, impact on fiscal space, and the incredible pressures that are caused by stress on food resources. But also, it can be an opportunity for support for just transition and investment in renewables in our regions. the cross-regional cooperation between Europe, Egypt, and the rest of the Middle East and North Africa is crucial in harnessing changes and transforming them into a winning partnership for prosperity of 500 million people inhabiting the Mediterranean and close to 400 million persons in the Arab world. I thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Amr Assam. I really appreciate your very comprehensive and holistic approach in your presentation. And I see the challenge, but I'm sure also from my experience with the Egyptian diplomacy that and what you are doing for the linkages with all other ministries and all other forums internationally, regionally, and nationally, that we are going to reach the objectives and the target that Egypt would like to have. Of course, we have challenges in the Mediterranean. We have, you already mentioned them, in addition to what Dr. Mahmoud Muhyiddin mentioned. We are talking about all types of challenges, everything. We are talking about sea level rise, we are talking about drought, we are talking about flooding, we are talking about coastal problems, we are talking about migration, we are talking about displacement, all these issues that are affecting the populations and the communities in the Mediterranean and are really related to all the global challenges of the, but we have a wonderful opportunity. We have north and south in the Mediterranean. We can give a model that it is very unique in the sense of cooperation and also in bringing the different perspectives from Europe and from the Africa and West Asia as well. Michael, I give you now the leadership for this second part. Yes, please.
Thank you. Also, I would like to thank very much Mr. Amr Assam also for touching upon the geopolitical complexity, but also giving the message of optimism, because many times crisis could be used in order to reorient to more sustainable approaches. And I think we have to focus on that with emphasis on renewables. And this is something definitely a point that our organizations are going to bring to the COP. We all know about the crisis, but there are more and more evidences, and whatever we are saying should be based on science. And this is an opportunity to have one of the most credible organizations and persons, Professor Wolfgang Kramer from the MED-ECC, who is the coordinator and research director at the Mediterranean Institute for Biodiversity and Ecology of the CNRS, to present us facts, figures, evidence-based urgency for action in actually shaping our position paper that we are going to present in the next COP. Welcome and thank you for your presence here, Professor. You are muted, I'm afraid.
You are still muted, Professor Kramer. No, you hit again. Now, I think it should, oh, there is a problem in your mic.
Does it work now?
Yes, please,
okay.
Go ahead.
It always goes wrong when somebody else unmutes me. Thank you. Thank you very much for the kind introduction, Michael, and thank you. Michael. Here.
ممكن يعمل
Please mute.
Unmute yourself again, Professor. Unmute. Yes, please.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Can you hear me now? No.
Yes, we hear
yes,
you.
indeed.
Yes.
Thank you. Yes.
Good. Thank you. Yes, thank you very much, Michael, for the invitation and for the introduction, and thank you to all colleagues to be here at this meeting. I see there's a high number of you, and I want to make it really short, also because it's rather late, and want to thank several of you for having mentioned the MEDEC activity already. So I suppose that at this time it is relatively widely known around the Mediterranean that in 2015, in the run-up for the COP21 in Paris, a large number of Mediterranean colleagues from all shores of the Mediterranean got together and decided to make our own assessment of risks associated not just with climate change, but climate and environmental change in the Mediterranean basin. And the report was published. Just to make it very short, we are now working on 3 additional special reports by our stakeholders. One on the Nexus, food, water, energy Nexus, one on coastal risks, and the third one on issues with about conflict and migration. Those reports are in preparation at the moment, and we will have very soon a full authors meeting in Barcelona about that. But what I want to remind you of is more of a context situation, because we first of all, bringing the report together was a major effort, although it didn't tell, I think, any one of you around this meeting anything that you didn't already know. I think that the risks associated with climate and environmental change in the Mediterranean, by and large, they are known. We are heading towards conditions of heat wave frequency and intensity in many urban settings around the Mediterranean that are going to be lethal for the part of the population that does not have access to air conditioning. We're heading towards very significant water shortages in the agricultural sector. We're heading towards a substantial amount of warming and heat wave situation in the marine ecosystem, affecting the entire food chain. And we are also heading towards, in some parts of the region, more intensive extreme events, such as storms and floods. You basically know about that, and it needs to be repeated, of course, every now and then. But I did not bring today any slides to illustrate this. What I want to talk about is a little bit more of the policy context where this operates. First of all, in parallel of the preparation of the MEDEC full report, the IPCC went into its 6th assessment cycle, and we received an invitation to provide a short paper, what's called a cross-chapter paper, for the last IPCC report published in the end of February this year. This was an effort, a spin-off effort, if you will, from MEDEC, but it was also a separate assessment effort, which I led together with a colleague from Egypt, Professor Elam Ali. I'm very grateful for the cooperation with her, because I think we were able to put together in a much shorter form than we were able to do in MEDEC the main risks that I referred to, also with regard to projections for the future. So I invite you all to download from the IPCC website. There is a special cross-chapter paper in the Working Group 2 report, which is entirely about the Mediterranean basin. It's the first time this has been done. But what is really the main conclusion? I mean, the main conclusion, as you know, and I'm not saying anything new, but I still beg you to consider that carefully, is that we are not on track. We're not on track to sustainability. We're not on track to protecting the people. We are particularly not on track towards climate justice. We are not in a situation where we're safeguarding the livelihoods of the poor parts of our population. Not even in the north. You know, even in northern countries, the risks to actually die during a Mediterranean heat wave is increasing for part of the population, and it's certainly not in the south and in the east. And sometimes I have the feeling that when we communicate with policy stakeholders about this, and as you know, with the IPCC, we have been doing this since 1988, so for more than 30 years, that we are listened to, and it is being considered as a very dire and important message. And somehow in the negotiations and discussions later on, that science-based message is taken as an extremist view. It is taken as a view that is somehow not taken into account the interest of the economy or of development in these countries. And this is where I like to invite you to take careful notice of the latest report of the IPCC, because, well, development issues have always been at the core of it, but I think stronger than ever, the issues of development and the possibilities of human livelihoods to be safeguarded under climate change conditions are taken into account. And that only makes the message even more dramatic. That is basically the short conclusion that you can draw from, and it is a more generalized pattern across the world, because there was another problem in earlier IPCC reports, and that was that there was insufficient information from the South. There was a heavy bias in risks and vulnerabilities being addressed by IPCC to northern and rich countries, and this has now been, through efforts of MEDEC and others, been not fully amended, but that imbalance has been changed substantially. And of course, it's not a surprise that we now see more and more scientific evidence for the vulnerabilities of populations in the South and the East at the global level, but also, as I don't know who it was, but somebody earlier in the discussion pointed out, as we see it in the Mediterranean. The Mediterranean basin is basically a model for the world in a way, because the same inequities that we see at the global scale, we also see them in the Mediterranean basin. And this is basically our starting point. And I only want to conclude on one element that the IPCC and also MEDEC have recently pointed at stronger than in the past, and that is the need for transformation. And transformation is not just a nice word to replace the diesel engine in your car with some kind of electrical tool, or to make your air conditioning a little bit more efficient in your house. Transformation really means what it means. It means changing to a different system different way of running our economy, a different way of producing our food, a different way of safeguarding the livelihoods of the entire population. And if we take that seriously and take that see that in the context of climate change, as well as the unfolding biodiversity crisis, which is the second large crisis, not just caused by climate change, but in interaction with climate change. If we take those together, then we have to talk about transformation. I am looking towards, I was going to say forward, but that has a too positive connotation for me. I'm looking towards the COP27. I'm seriously questioning whether governments around the world are on track to make more substantial progress than has been done in Glasgow. Contrary to many of my colleagues, I was very much frustrated by Glasgow. I thought that much more could have been achieved. And after all, how do we tell our children that this is the 27th conference of the parties, and that concentrations of greenhouse gases are still rising, and the number of people vulnerable now being estimated between 3.3 and 3.6 billion on the planet is still increasing? There is something fundamentally wrong, and it probably requires a more drastic approach to the discussion than what we've seen at the last 26 meetings of the same kind. So of course we have to be hopeful, but from a scientific standpoint, where I look at the evidence of past action as a measure of potential for the future action, I cannot say that I'm very optimistic, and we have to become much more serious than we have been in the past. Thank you very much. I'm available for questions. Of course, there's a Q&A in this section, but I thought for the science part that should be sufficient. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Really, every time I hear you, I feel that we are so late, not in track, and you always stress this. And we have discussed also in the past, Wolfgang, that our analyses are pessimistic, but still we conduct policies in an optimistic way. We have to. The big problem is at the moment that when we are talking about transition, and this is one again of the messages we would like to bring to COP27, is that transition is very difficult to be done in a single country, and we need a lot at least the region. And because we are a north-south region, it is indeed a model. If we manage to have even a common, let's say, denominator of transition within this area, we can actually give a very optimistic message to the world. This is why we as regional organizations try to bring not only the civil society and organizations, but also press our governments to understand that this region, which is an eco-region at the end of the day, needs to have a minimum of common approaches in these difficult problems. Not being a UN region, this is not very easy, but at the same time, we have managed until now to bring together also ministers and others in shaping at least a minimum of policies on that. And this is one of the scopes also of this preparation. And thank you very much indeed for that. Without saying more, I would invite engineer Serif El Kayat from the Kuwait Environment Public Authority to address us. And we consider very important your participation, Engineer Serif El Kayat.
Let me also add something, Professor Skoulos. باشمهندس شريف، انت مشرفنا النهارده وسعداء بوجودك معانا، ودي الحقيقه التجربه الاولى ان احنا نكون بنسمع بالذات واحنا بنستعد للكاب، يكون عندنا استاذ مصطفى، حضرتك لو تحط نفسك على ميوت. فبنرحب بيك.
There was no translation in English, please.
أنا كنت برحب
Yes, okay, thank you.
برحب بالمهندس شريف الخياط وسعداء بوجوده معنا، وسعداء بأن يكون معنا أحد المفوضين والمسؤولين عن التفاوض من جانب دول الخليج العربي. فمستعدين ومتشوقين لسماعك باشمهندس شريف. اتفضل يا فندم، الكلمة معك.
شكرا دكتور عماد، واشكر لك الدعوه الكريمه للتحدث عن ظاهره تغير المناخ والتحديات اللي تواجه دول مجلس التعاون الخليجي في هذه الظاهره. اذا تسمحوا لي بس يعني اشارككم برزنتيشن بسيط، اذا تسمح لي دكتور عماد.
اتفضل اتفضل يا باشمهندس شريف.
الشاشه واضحه دكتور عماد؟
واضحه جدا، واضحه جدا، ممتاز.
الاخوه والاخوات المشاركين في هذا الحوار، السلام عليكم ورحمه الله وبركاته. بالبدايه راح اتكلم عن يعني الاثار السلبيه لظاهره تغير المناخ على دول مجلس التعاون الخليجي، وراح أتكلم عن بعض المحاور البسيطة مرفقة فيها بعض البيانات الموثقة عن دول الخليج، وهي ارتفاع درجات الحرارة وانخفاض مستويات هطول الأمطار وحساسية السواحل، الارتفاع مستوى سطح البحر، وأثر تغير المناخ على مصادر المياه وأثرها على البيئة البحرية والأسماك، وتقييم الهشاشة والتكيف على الصحة العامة. كانطلاقة لهذا البرزنتيشن، مقدمة لدول مجلس التعاون، فهي دول تقع في شبه الجزيرة العربية، مساحتها الإجمالية تقريبا 2 مليون كيلومتر ونص. معظم تضاريسها مسطحات صحراوية وكثبان رملية، وسلسلة بسيطة من الجبال يعني ما تتعدى 214 كيلومتر في عمان والمملكة العربية السعودية وبعض الأجزاء من دولة الإمارات. دول الخليج لها خصائص مناخية متشابهة، وهي مصنفة كأراضي جافة وتعتبر هشة من الناحية البيئية، تعاني من التدهور مع انخفاض في هطول الأمطار، درجات تبخر عالية، ضعف وانخفاض خصوبة التربة، وغطاء متناثر من النباتات، ودرجات حرارة مرتفعة، ومياه سطحية محدودة جدا. جميع النماذج المناخية تشير إلى أن منطقة مجلس التعاون الخليجي تشهد اتجاه ثابت للاحترار، بالأخص في فصول الشتاء، بمعنى أن فصول الشتاء سنة بعد سنة في تقلص مستمر، وهذا يؤدي طبعا إلى زيادة الجفاف وارتفاع متوسطات درجات الحرارة بشكل عام، وهو ما يؤدي بالنهاية إلى انخفاض غلات المحاصيل. حقيقة يعني هذا السلايد أنا فكرت فيه كثير. يمكن دول مجلس التعاون الكل يعرف أنها من الدول النفطية، وبالتالي دول الخليج في بعض الأحيان في أروقة المفاوضات قد تكون متهمة في زيادة ظاهرة الاحترار العالمي. فحبيت أشارككم بعض المعلومات عن دول مجلس التعاون. فبالتالي بس إذا تسمحوا لي شوي إن شاء الله. فدول مجلس التعاون الخليجي مجمل انبعاثاتها من CO2 ما يتعدى 3.5 من اجمالي الانبعاثات العالميه. يمكن تلاحظون دول الميدل ايست مجتمعه يعني ما تمثل كميه كبيره من الانبعاثات بالنسبه للجرين هاوس جاز كلها، لكن انا فضلت احط الثري جازز المسؤوله عنها الدول الناميه، وهي CO2 ما يتعدى اجمالي 3.45، غاز الميثان 3.19، والنيتروس اوكسايد 1.4 من اجمالي الانبعاثات العالميه. دول مجلس التعاون تشهد نمو سكاني مضطرد. النمو السكاني 4.1 خلال العقد او العقدين الماضيين، يمكن وصلنا الى 7.9 في بعض السنوات. اجمالي تعداد السكان في دول مجلس التعاون يتراوح الى 66.5 مليون نسمه. ندخل في بعض المعلومات. تنبؤات ارتفاع درجات الحراره حتى عام 2100. الجراف هذا للامانه حصيله 8 نماذج مناخيه تم اعدادها لاكثر من سيناريو على حسب دراسات الاي بي سي سي، الار سي بي 4.5 و 8.5. والار سي بي يعني للمعلومات هو يعتمد على تركيز غازات الدفيئه في الغلاف الجوي.
ممكن can we put on mute هارس؟ we put on mute وبعدين دكتور شريف اتفضل افتح تاني ميوت بتاعك.
اوكي. فالار سي بي 4.5 و 8.5 هو يعتمد على تركيز غازات الدفيئه مستقبلا في الغلاف الجوي. فافضل سيناريو الار سي بي 4.5 وأسوأ سيناريو هو ال 8.5. في السيناريوهين نلاحظ في ارتفاع مضطرد في درجات الحرارة حتى عام 2100. شيء بالشيء يذكر WHO في تقرير لدرجات الحرارة في معظم عواصم العالم، صنفت منطقة مطربة في دولة الكويت في 2016 كثالث أعلى درجة حرارة على كوكب الأرض وأعلى درجة حرارة عالمية خلال ال 76 أو 76 عام الماضية، وهي أعلى درجة حرارة في آسيا. فبالتالي منطقة الخليج معرضة لهذه الدرجات العالية من الحرارة بالماضي ومستقبلا. في تنبؤات انخفاض مستويات هطول الأمطار حتى عام 2100، وهذه حصيلة 7 نماذج مناخية تم إعدادها لل RCB 4.5 و 8.5. نلاحظ انخفاض لغاية 2100 في مستويات هطول الأمطار على دول مجلس التعاون. في ال RCB 4.5 و 8.5 لارتفاع درجات الحرارة مقسمة على سنوات معينة من 2031 إلى 50. احتمالية الارتفاع من 0.6 إلى 1.2. ما بي يعني آخذ شرح كثير في هذا الجراف، لكن عملنا 2 سيناريو لارتفاعات درجة الحرارة مقسمة على سنوات، ومستويات هطول الأمطار أيضا مقسمة على سنوات إلى غاية 2100. كل السيناريوهات تشير إلى ارتفاع درجات الحرارة، وقد نصل في عام 2100 إلى 4.8 درجة كمعدل ارتفاع في منطقة الخليج، وهذا بالضبط اللي أكد عليه البنك الدولي في بعض تقاريره الخاصة في تغير المناخ. فيما يخص هطول الأمطار، يعني من المحتمل أن نصل إلى -30 كمعدل عام لتنافس هطول الأمطار على دول مجلس التعاون. حساسية السواحل لارتفاع مستوى سطح البحر، حقيقة يعني الكل عارف أن دول الخليج ومعظم دول العالم معظم منشآتها النفطية ومصانعها ومحطات إنتاج الكهرباء وتحلية المياه والمدن الحضرية تقع على الشريط الساحلي. فبالتالي ارتفاع مستوى سطح البحر بمعدل 2 متر قد يؤدي إلى يعني دمار شامل لهذا الخط الساحلي المكتظ في منشآت حيوية لهذه الدول. في دراسة حالة عملناها في دولة الكويت لجزيرة محاذية للحدود العراقية تسمى جزيرة بوبيان. عملنا 4 سيناريوهات من نص متر إلى 2 متر. نلاحظ أن معظم هذه الجزيرة الحيوية سيغمرها الماء يعني عند 1 متر، وفي بعض الأجزاء الداخلية عند 2 متر. يعني هذا دليل على مستوى الدمار اللي راح يحصل لو ارتفع مستوى سطح البحر حسب توقعات الIPCC. أثر المناخ على مصادر المياه، حقيقة يعني الدول العربية مجتمعة وليست دول الخليج مصنفة على أنها دول نادرة في المياه. مستوى أقل من 500 متر مكعب من المياه المتجددة للفرد سنويا، وبالتالي احنا نعاني من الأمن المائي مستقبلا. هطول الأمطار في دول مجلس التعاون يتراوح في أكثر دولة في سلطنة عمان 125 ملم سنوي، وفي أدناها في المملكة العربية السعودية تقريبا 60 ملم بالسنة. فبالتالي عندنا مشكلة أمن مائي، وبالتالي دول الخليج لجأت إلى تحلية المياه عن طريق الوقود الأحفوري من إمدادات البحر. وبالتالي نلاحظ في الجراف مصادر إمدادات المياه المنزلية في دول مجلس التعاون من المياه المحلاة مرتفع جدا، وأيضا تطور طاقة تحلية المياه في دول المجلس في تصاعد مستمر نظرا لتلبية احتياجات المواطنين من المياه العذبة. أثر تغير المناخ على الأمن المائي، يعني بالجراف هذا يوضح أن في زيادة في استهلاك المياه مع ارتفاع درجات الحرارة. يتراوح يعني بين 5 إلى 7% لو ارتفعت درجات الحرارة مستقبلا. فبالتالي عندي ضغط على محطات تحلية المياه مستقبلا لتلبية الاحتياجات المنزلية للسكان. أثر تغير المناخ على البيئة البحرية والأسماك. حقيقة الخليج العربي خليج شبه مغلق، وبالتالي نعاني في الخليج العربي من تغير الخواص الكيميائية والفيزيائية لمياه الخليج العربي بسبب تغير المناخ وارتفاع درجة حرارته وملوحته. فبالتالي قاعد يؤدي إلى بيضاض المرجان وهو الموئل للأسماك. مستقبلا راح تعاني دول الخليج من نقص الموارد الغذائية بمنطقة الخليج العربي الخاصة بالأسماك. دراسة حالة عملناها في أحد الجزر في دولة الكويت، نلاحظ يعني بيضاض المرجان واختفائه يعني لمساحة تقدر ب 121 متر مربع خلال 14 سنة. الفرق كبير بين 2003 و 2017 لهذه الظاهرة. تقييم الهشاشة والتكيف للصحة العامة. حقيقة في دول المجلس نعاني من أمرين، من ارتفاع درجات الحرارة والعواصف الغبارية، راح أشرحها بالسلايد اللاحق. ارتفاع الحرارة هو أحد المخاطر البيئية بسبب التغير المناخي. دول الخليج العربي أحد الحالات الخاصة بسبب طبيعة الموقع الجغرافي ومناخ المنطقة. متوقع أن تزداد مستقبلا مع التغير المناخي. آثارها الصحية طبعا الهيت ستروك، وهي الأكثر شيوعا في دول المجلس. ارتفاع أعداد الطوارئ في المستشفيات لمرضى القلب والشرايين. ارتفاع الوفيات. التأثر الأكبر للفئات الحساسة وخاصة العاملين في الخارج. تزايد أيام الغبار العالق في دول المجلس. الجراف يعني جدا واضح. من 61 إلى 2017 عندنا زيادة في الأيام المغبرة. صورة للمملكة العربية السعودية أثناء تعرضها لعاصفة غبارية. أيضا يوجد تأثير اقتصادي واجتماعي من ارتفاع درجات الحرارة.
Could you please summarize? Is it?
أيضا نعاني من قلة الأراضي الصالحة للزراعة في دول المجلس. تتراوح تقريبا إلى 1.4 كنسبة إجمالية من مساحة الأراضي بسبب ندرة المياه، تملح التربة أو التصحر، الجفاف، تناقص هطول الأمطار والمناخ القاسي. ثلث إمدادات النفط تأتي من دول الشرق الأوسط وبالأخص في دول مجلس التعاون. بسبب سياسات تغير المناخ من المحتمل أن يقل الطلب على الوقود الأحفوري، وهذا سيسبب أزمة لدول المجلس في اعتماد موازناتها العامة وصرفها على معظم المشاريع التنموية. فضلا عن اللي أنا قلته، دول المجلس تحاول أنها تبني مدن اقتصادية مستدامة. مصدر ومدينة دبي مستدامة، مدينة الملك عبد الله، قلب مدينة الدوحة، مدينة الحرير في دولة الكويت، ومدينة نيوم. الخلاصة this is last slide مستر مايكل.
شكرا يا دكتور. تفضل يا دكتور.
آثار تغير المناخ على دول المجلس، وهي الخلاصة وفقا للبنك الدولي معظم المدن في دول مجلس التعاون ستتأثر وفقا لسيناريو ال4 درجات. واحنا
دكتور
لا he's finishing Michael. He's finishing. This is the last slide, Michael.
Engineer.
Yes, this is the last slide, Michael, on the conclusion.
Okay.
Yes, please go ahead.
في تهديد مباشر على الأمن المائي في ظل شح الموارد المائية المتجددة. آثار تغير المناخ على الأمن الغذائي ستكون خطيرة، حيث ينظر إلى تغير المناخ على أنه عامل مضاعف للتهديد. ارتفاع مستوى سطح البحر والعواصف والأعاصير المتطرفة تهدد المناطق الساحلية المكتظة بالمنشآت الحيوية. زيادة حدوث الجفاف والأعاصير والعواصف الرملية والغبارية وتأثيراتها المباشرة على جميع قطاعات الدول. التخوف من نقص الطلب العالمي على الوقود الأحفوري بسبب سياسات المناخ، من جملتها تسعير الكربون على سبيل المثال. بالتالي دول المجلس ستعاني من زيادة الاستثمارات الحكومية والقطاع الخاص خلال العقود القادمة لمعالجة آثار تغير المناخ، على الرغم من أن دول مجلس التعاون مصنفة كدول نامية لأنها تعمل جاهدة لتنفيذ متطلبات اتفاق باريس للمناخ على المستوى الوطني في مجالي التخفيف والتكيف. وشكرا لكم.
شكرا جزيلا باشمهندس شريف على هذا العرض الممتاز. الحقيقة انه حضرتك اكدت لنا على موضوعين مهمين جدا. الموضوع الاول هو حجم آثار التغيرات المناخية على منطقة الخليج العربي وعلى دول الخليج العربي. والحقيقة ان انا يعني كان في بعض المعلومات كانت بالنسبة لي جديدة، لكن فعلا ما تقدمت به سيادتك كان مهم جدا. النقطة الثانية انه كثيرين من الناس بينظروا للدول الخليجية على انها يعني دول متهمة بموضوع تغير المناخ، لكن هو في الحقيقة الموضوع مش بهذا الشكل، ولكن يحتاج مننا باستمرار ان احنا ننظر للموضوع بشكل اكثر يعني شمولية، وننظر له ايضا على انه هناك مبادرات قوية من دول الخليج للمساهمة في الحد من تغير المناخ على مستوى العالم، وبالتالي كمان على بالأخص على منطقة الخليج العربي. بشكرك مرة تانية. Thank you very much, Engineer Sharif, for this very comprehensive. I would really appreciate if you send us the presentation. لو تقدر حضرتك تبعت لنا العرض. و back to you, Michael, to lead the discussion. Back to you, Michael.
Thank you very much, and I would like to thank you for this presentation, which actually makes a link to also to the next COP, and is good for also this audience to have an understanding also for issues outside the Mediterranean as well in the neighborhood. Now we are entering session 3, which is indeed the road to COP27, vision, challenges, and level of ambition. I would like to briefly, let's say, summarize from where we started from Glasgow. Actually, we all have the feeling that because of a number of reasons, I'm not going to spend time on that. We are not in track. If countries wish to meaningfully and in a credible way move and honor their commitments, they have to, from Glasgow, even Glasgow was not the ideal agreement, need to keep some of their promises. These promises were to revisit and strengthen their climate pledges by the end of 2022. So this is the first one. We have to remind and we have to follow. In order to keep actually the 1.5 degrees goal within reach to phase down coal and fossil fuel subsidies. So the subsidies is the second important thing. Then it is the finance to meet their unmet climate finance commitments, as we said before, among them the doubling the amount of support to developing economies for adaptation. And fourth, to establish a dedicated space to address the permanent harm that climate has inflicted, referred to as losses and damages on developing economies. So these are important issues that have been also touched upon by the previous speakers. And we would like to see how best we mobilize our membership, the NGOs, as important climate change actors, because now, more than ever before, it is necessary that we have one voice in shaping and promoting really binding climate policies, and the accent on implementation of the commitments is very important, including nature. All what it was said in parallel, the holistic way in which all policies try to keep also our commitment for biodiversity and for justice, for just transformation. And this is the backbone of our policy and our position that we'll elaborate in the coming weeks and months, in order to have a very strong message, realistic at the same time. We don't underestimate the difficult times we have in front of us, but as it was said also before, sometimes crisis is the best opportunity for transformation with innovative, not only technological, but institutional approaches as well. So this is the starting of this session, where we'll ask, first of all, I'll ask Emma to add a few introductory comments for this session. And then I will ask Vanya and Haris to elaborate more on our next steps.
Thank you very much, Michael. And let me try to make this in Arabic for the participants to be listening to the two languages. الحقيقة بروفيسور سكولوس وضع بعض النقاط المهمة جدا في طرحنا، وأنا أيضا أود أن أشاركه ما قاله، لكني أريد أن أضيف بعض الأشياء. كلنا نتفق على أن منطقة المتوسط والمنطقة العربية منطقة مع بعضها، يعني كلها بشكل شمولي تتعرض بشدة، وهي أكثر المناطق هشاشة فيما يتعلق بموضوع الكلايمت، بموضوع المناخ. وتوجد لدينا فرصتان، الكوب في شرم الشيخ والكوب في دولة الإمارات. كل ما نريده هو أن نبني قاعدة قوية لمشاركة المجتمع المدني، قاعدة قوية لمشاركة المجتمع المدني في تحقيق التغيير المطلوب. لدينا من التجارب السابقة ومن مشروعاتنا الصغيرة والمتوسطة والكبيرة small, medium and large scale projects. عندنا مشروعات نفذتها المجتمع المدني في قضايا تتعلق بالكلايمت، وعندما نتحدث عن مشروعات التخفيف الميتيجيشن، عندما نتحدث عن مشروعات الادابتيشن التكيف، يوجد هذه الأمثلة. ولكن ما زلنا نعاني من فكرة التشارك في التعامل مع القضايا على أرض الواقع وفي التعامل مع المجتمعات المهددة. الخريطة للمنطقة العربية والمنطقة المتوسطية تبين المناطق الحمراء، الهوت سبوتس، المناطق الساخنة اللي فيها هذه المشاكل، ولدينا هذه القدرة على تحويل التحديات إلى فرص. كل ما هو مطلوب ما تحدث عنه الدكتور محمود محي الدين، محتاجين توجه مختلف، محتاجين توجه للتمويل، توجه لإنعاش أو لتطوير هذه الشراكات اللي موجودة على سكيل صغير، على مساحات صغيرة، تكون بشكل أوسع. I would like to close this by in English that what we want to see is a different approach. We have been trying always to have and to seek this kind of partnership, and always the initiative comes from the civil society. We want to have now an approach that will provide the partnership, and it becomes part of the performance indicators for the implementation. Of course, we have already examples of success on the different dimensions. If we are talking about coastal, if we are talking about environmental protection, if we're talking about projects dealing with adaptation or with mitigation, we have the examples, but we need to go further and we get more involvement of the different actors, especially the civil society, in the implementation, and to have more resources to do that. So I'm joining Professor Skoulos on what he said, but I would like to hear also from the next speakers on how we can, because this will be the first in a chain or a series of activities, workshops that we are going to organize, and we want to build every time on what we are talking about. So I stop here and I give the Michael again the floor to facilitate. Please, back to you, Mike.
Thank you, Ahmad. I would like to ask first Vanya Walker-Lee, economist and journalist, who has also who was also the guest editor of the previous Sustainable Mediterranean special issue we presented in Glasgow, and Haris Palioyannis, who is a member of the Secretariat of MIO, to give us some information. First of all, Vanya, to explain a little bit the whole process of the COPs and where we have more opportunities, and then Haris to come and elaborate more on our positions. So Vanya, please take the floor. It's a pleasure to have you with us today.
Thank you, Michael. Just to explain that I have attended 20 COPs since 1997 to Glasgow, and 8 what they call intersessionals in Bonn from 2013 to 2019, but I still have a lot to learn. I have also been an adopted Mediterranean for several decades, living in the south of Spain and then Malta, where I do what I can to support Nature Trust Malta and also MIO. So my presentation is really rather simple. It's the ABC of the COP process, and I apologize to all of the people on this call who know far more than I ever will. So the text of the convention was adopted at the Rio Sustainable Development Summit in 1992, came into force in 1994, and there are now 197 parties, and there have been COPs every year except 2020 because of COVID, and 3 so far in Africa, twice in Marrakesh, once in Nairobi, but much more times in Europe, which is not the way it's supposed to operate. The convention was then complemented by the Kyoto Protocol for emission reductions by industrialized countries up to 2020, and then the Paris Agreement adopted in 2015, which entered into force in 2016 and now has 193 parties. Paris provides for post-2020 wide-ranging action with its key goal, and I quote, causing an increase in the global average temperature to well below 2 degrees centigrade above pre-industrial levels, and pursuing efforts to limit the temperature increase to 1.5. As nationally determined contributions NDCs to the global response to climate change, all parties are to undertake and communicate ambitious efforts. Every nation sends a delegation to the UN. Some are very large and some are very small. So do the UN and other international organizations, as well as a broad range of non-state actors. Some COPs, such as Glasgow, also have a heads of state segment, but every COP has a high-level segment for ministers lasting 1 or 2 days. Over 1,500 NGOs have admitted observer status. However, non-admitted NGOs, which may apply to some NI members, can and do request any observer delegation to include one or more of their representatives. Within COPs, NGOs are grouped into 9 so-called constituencies: farmers, industry, environment, and 3 informal groups: faith-based, education, parliamentarians. Climate Action Network International, organizations in 130 countries, has nodes for both Europe and the Arab world, and I trust that MIO is developing its contacts with both these structures. COP26 was attended by 39,509 registered participants. Over 21,000 were parties and observers, and over 11,000 were NGOs. The COP Blue Zone is for accredited participants. A nearby green zone admits both registered and non-registered participants to a large number of events, exhibition booths, and all kinds of demos and happenings. Egypt's foreign minister recently confirmed that such a zone will be set up at COP27 and, quote, demonstrations allowed, no quote. Well, COPs are basically negotiations between the delegates of nations on draft resolutions, which then have to be adopted by consensus of all nations, otherwise they fail. So that means the developing countries, 135, to which all the South Mediterranean nations belong, and the rest developed of various kinds. NGOs work hard to influence the wording of these texts, but are excluded from many of the negotiations. 153 NDCs representing 49% of global GHG emissions tabled by COP26 together would deliver an increase in the global temperature of 2.7 centigrade by 2100. Indeed, scientists affirm the world can only keep open the 1.5 possibility by reducing emissions by 45% levels by 2030 and by achieving net zero by 2050. Countries admitted at COP26, as already had been mentioned, that they would miss the promised $100 billion a year climate finance.
There is some voice, sorry. Yes, please. Okay, thank you.
I think it's Vanya who is typing as she's speaking.
No, I'm just moving my page up. Sorry. I won't do it again. Developed countries admitted at COP26 they would not meet the $100 billion a year goal for climate finance, at least not before 2023. The 3 recent IPCC reports, who came out after COP26, issued dire warnings on the irreversible catastrophic consequences over coming decades of current climate change policies. 11 days ago, the COP26 UK President Alok Sharma said, leaders have not done enough to deliver on their Glasgow commitments, and that must change. Nations were encouraged by COP26 to submit more ambitious NDCs by COP27 and annually thereafter to be reviewed by annual ministerial meetings. In the most recent of his innumerable climate warnings, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres stated on the 18th of May that the just issued World Meteorological Organization report is a dismal litany of humanity's failure to tackle climate disruption. COP27 will thus have as its key focus getting the main emitting nations, that's the G20, which account for 80% of world emissions, to dramatically improve their NDCs while also providing finance necessary to bring about sufficient action in developing nations for adaptation and also sharing relevant technology. US Special Presidential Envoy for Climate, John Kerry, keeps saying, it's trillions, not billions we need, but how to mobilize sufficient private investments to complement money from national governments. As big a challenge is how to hugely reduce the output and use of oil, gas, and coal, major emitters of greenhouse gases, to meet the 1.5 centigrade goal, an unwelcome idea to their managements, shareholders, and financiers, many major banks, and indeed many supportive governments. The key issue at Sharm el-Sheikh will be the developing nations' demands for loss and damage, already mentioned, when climate impacts cannot be adapted to. A system of financial support strongly opposed by developed nations. Prior meetings of developed nations may largely determine what may or may not happen at COP27, the G7 summit in Germany in June, the G21 in Indonesia at the end of October. The Ukraine situation and its many impacts could influence what they decide on climate action. And now, this is my last remark, there's another complication, a global biodiversity framework to 2030 to be adopted by a biodiversity convention, COP, was scheduled in China for autumn 2020. And this was aimed to facilitate future COP decisions on nature-based solutions. But the event has been rescheduled several times for COVID reasons. And the latest date announced by the CBD Secretariat is the third quarter of 2022, and is described as tentative. So there you have it in a highly simplified form. In that, my calendar says 6th of November is the Sunday, so perhaps that is what you meant for the start date of COP27.
Thank you very much, Vanya. You tried to summarize really the whole development and issues. Thank you very much indeed. I hope that through the interpretation, all our audience, all our members managed to follow. The situation is difficult. As it was, I mean, in the concluding phrases of Vanya, we see that the additional complication of parallel negotiations in the issues of biodiversity, the fact that this is taking place in China, and of course the crisis is all over. So one of the key, I believe, messages we have to use as an important starting point is that all these difficulties and crises should not actually slow down our efforts to achieve what it has been pledged, but on the contrary, to try and speed up the replacement of carbon with renewable energies. We do know that the reply is that we need a transition period and transition to natural gas, but we are afraid of this diversion of resources, and we have to make sure that in COP27 there is a reaffirmation and clear statement that this transition is not going to become an alternative, because a lot of investment has been diverted from the renewables to gas. So this is one of the important problems behind, and also the many hesitations in the area of biodiversity make this picture particularly complex, and we need to raise our voice in keeping all the Rio commitments and vision, not only alive, but enforced. Now, I would like to ask Haris Palioyannis to take the floor and continue in concluding the presentations.
Thank you, Professor Skoulos. Can you hear me well?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you. I will share my screen now. I think you can see. Yes. So, dear colleagues, high esteemed speakers and participants, I will present to you briefly one of MIOX's important climate change related actions of last year, which was the production of a position paper on the Mediterranean's wind energy transition and how to achieve climate neutrality and biodiversity objectives through consensus. So the aim of this publication, as we know, curbing climate change and reversing biodiversity decline, as we all heard today, are two of the greatest challenges we both face. And mitigating climate change, one of the readily tools that we have is the expansion of renewable energy in our efforts to decarbonize our economies and societies. And for protecting, managing, and conserving biodiversity, even restoring it, the cornerstones of their protection are protected area schemes, such as Natura 2000 network, Ramsar sites, etc. Now, the wind energy planning frequently focuses on ecologically valuable areas, and we focused on this publication on wind energy since we know that wind and solar energy have very high potential in the Mediterranean. They are quite cheap and ready to install if we compare them with other renewables, and their market is quite a competing one. So we are facing a green versus green dilemma, which is from the one hand, protecting biodiversity or even restoring it, and from the other hand, facilitating the wind energy transition that we require in order to decarbonize the Mediterranean. This paper was built also on MIOX's experience on leading a feasibility study in Evia Island, which is an area here in Greece of very important for biodiversity reason, and it is also witnessing wind energy transition in the coming year, in the previous years. So the main aim of this publication is to stimulate discussion on how the transition to wind energy and nature conservation can be addressed in a wise and participatory way in order to find the maximum consensus for a common sustainable solution. Why this policy paper now? So as also Ms. Vanya talked about the post-2020 biodiversity framework, the focus of the discussions is around expanding the network of protected areas to 30%, both on land and on sea, with 10% of them strictly protected, the well-known 30 by 30. And for the first time, we have new binding nature restoration targets and legislation with the EU pioneering on these discussions. The climate change and energy framework, we all heard it during the discussions today, but we are asking for an increased share of renewables in the energy mix, which is framed globally from the SDGs, especially SDG 13 on climate action and 7 on affordable and clean energy. The EU Green Deal as EU's transformative growth model, and regionally in the Mediterranean with the 2030 Greener Med agenda of the UFM. Of course, we're in the run-up to COP15 with new dates and a delay due to the pandemic, and COP27 in Egypt. As we were drafting the policy paper, though, Europe is facing a complex cluster of multiple energy, power, and geostrategic crises due to the war with the Ukraine. So another thing that we are witnessing is fast tracking of permitting in renewable energy sources, which is one of the gaps that we have identified. Here you can see briefly the list of contents of the policy paper. I'm not gonna go into detail into that because you are all gonna receive it. But just to mention that the publication concludes with some key recommendations that we do not want this to be a wish list or wishful thinking, but more of pragmatic approaches and solutions in order to facilitate bridging the gaps or the policy alignment that is needed. And the next steps of this publication is, of course, to consult with our membership in order to finalize this document in a participatory way and receive their input and comments from their experiences and local know-hows, but also consult with the wind energy sector and other stakeholder groups, such as protected area managers or academics. Of course, as a policy paper, it will be promoted and advocated for as one more NGO-driven contribution to the preparations for COP27, but also we will share it with Mediterranean key organizations at the EU level, at the Mediterranean level with UFM, UNEP-MAP, and the League of Arab States, the Mediterranean ministries of environment, planning, climate change, energy, etc. But also very importantly on the site level with managers of the energy sector, the civil society, like we're doing today and through such discussions, local communities, etc. So thank you for your attention. More than happy to answer your questions or post your comments in the chat.
Thank you very much, Harry. And this is just also to demonstrate to our membership and all the participants the in-depth work we undertake in order to shape the positions of our organization. And of course, this does not stop here. There are a number of issues related to climate change and biodiversity, including the tools that we should adopt and use, among them also public awareness, participation, and education, of course, that on which we have elaborated further positions. Now, with this presentation, we concluded the presentation part, and we will have the opportunity now to hear the positions and interventions or questions of the audience in also in the chat, but also in Emad. We may allow for a number of positions and questions. We have more than half an hour for this purpose.
Michael, I have received a message from Dr. Fatouhi that he wanted to contribute. I hope he's still with us. Dr. Fatouhi, you are still there? Dr. Fatouhi, أنت موجود؟ طيب. Okay, he is not online, but he sent the message just 5 minutes ago. Michael,
at any moment, you,
yes,
Mohammed, you can intervene. Yeah.
The model that Harris gave us about the wind energy, I think we can have a similar, if we invest a little bit of our time, we can have similar presentations for different topics that are also linking, climate change issues and civil society involvement and engagement in the process. I think we need, because we will go further in the next and coming meetings, consultations on position papers that will be presenting the civil society. And I will put at the end a couple of minutes just to say something about how the civil society engagement in the COP could happen from our perspective from Egypt, as we are very close to the secretariat and also to the presidency on the strategy for the civil society involvement. I see some Ines is also putting some questions. Do you see it on the chat, Michael? Ines Kostish.
I see a hand there also by Maha Ismail. I don't know if, could you read this, because it is not
I can read it
for me.
Ines, if you are listening, Ines, you are listening to me?
Yes, I am. Hi. Hi.
Okay. Very good questions, Ines. You want to make them or you want me to answer?
I can repeat them quickly. Thank you very much for the opportunity, and thank you all for your contributions. I'm a member of Regional Parliament in the Netherlands. Two practical questions. Will there be space for these marches and protests like we had in Glasgow? How do you think that will be organized? And the second question is, when and where can organizations apply for a space in the Green Zone this year? When is the deadline? Thank you.
Let me ask if Mr. Amra Astam is still with us to see if he can. I have my personal idea about your questions, but maybe if he is there, he could also shed some light from the Egyptian presidency.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ahmed.
Yes, he is there. Okay.
Can you hear me well?
Very well.
I mean, well, thank you very much, Ines. And I think the two questions that I have taken note of are, the first is concerning the place for marches and green protests. And this was one of actually the very first things that were agreed and actions were taken to provide for in COP27. One of the this will be there will be a place which is dedicated for climate action, climate justice protests, and the other good news is that this year the Green Zone will be a walking distance from the venue itself. So this will allow many participants who have access to both spaces to shuttle between the two zones. So I think that this is another good step in the right direction. Concerning the dates for the registration, what I can say that by and large things will start to move very, very quickly just after the conclusion of the next SBs, SB 56. So you will find in very quick waves the dates for the registration, the dates for the pavilions, for the side events, and for activities at the Green Zone. So I think before the end of the month of June, everything will be pretty much clear. I hope that I contributed to answering your question. Thank you, Dr. Ahmed.
Very much, Amr Bek. In fact, I had this morning a meeting with CAN International, and I was exactly saying the same as you mentioned about the space for the demonstrations and so on. So I took the liberty in confirming that I am sure that Egypt is welcoming and will give the space, and they are very ready. This based on the discussion we had earlier with the Minister of Foreign Affairs and the team there. So thank you for confirming this. What I would like you, Ines, to do is I want you to disseminate this information because many people are still thinking and they are still talking about things that are not happening. So please help us and also telling everyone not only in the Netherlands, not only in the parliament and the regional parliament where you represent, but we need people to understand that Egypt is giving the space for civil society and for the marches and also for all the actions that will be, of course, definitely as in any country with all the requirements of keeping, the organization and the system and everything to be done in a very peaceful and a very nice way. For the second part, I'm very eager to know about the green zone, when it is going to start to prepare and to see how it will look like. So this will be another discussion that I will have with you, Mr. Hamr. Hopefully, we'll be in Bonn, and maybe we will have some time to discuss this in Bonn when we meet there, inshallah.
Ahmad, I see some hands by Maha Ismail and Samah Muhammad.
Mahad, you want to say something?
I don't know if they have.
No. But we had someone who put. He said, "I have a question for Harris." في حد قال أنا عايز أعمل سؤال لهارس يا جماعة؟ حنان بطرس she wrote. مها اتفضلي يا أستاذة مها. عندك مشكلة
We cannot hear you.
عندك مشكلة في الكونكشن.
Okay. Very sorry, we cannot. The connection is very bad. You can send your question.
Hanan Botros was writing something about the green challenges. Are there conflicting, if I can use, or controversial opportunities to face the climate change? This is to Harris. This is exactly what she's writing in Arabic, and I translated exactly. Harris, do you want to support?
Yes, I'm not
challenges?
really.
Hanan is one of the journalists, and she is very active on this.
Oh, thank you very much for the question. If I understand correctly, is whether the biodiversity objectives and the climate change objectives are conflicting. If this is the question, there's not really an answer to that. Of course, they shouldn't be conflicting, and we're not advocating for that. It's just that we have identified this gap, that it has been overlooked, in our opinion, till now, that one of the major problems that we will face is that both the renewable energy transition and the new biodiversity framework will require a lot of land in order to install the wind farms, the solar plants, etc. And at the same time, the conservation community wants to increase the area of protected area seams. So there will be, let's say, a conflict of interest in terms of land use and site planning, etc. But this is exactly why we need a better policy alignment and solutions in order how to overcome these challenges.
Thank you very much, Harris. I have another question in Arabic, which I think I will leave Michael to respond to this one, because Hadir is she is studying political sciences and economy, and she is asking about why the international law or the United Nations is not putting very clear legislations on all countries. She's talking about all countries. She's talking about the ones that are creating behind the climate change or the reason because of the climate change, and although on how these legislations or regulations could be. It's exactly what we are trying to do in the convention, but I will leave you for Michael to respond.
Ahmad, because of the connection, I couldn't get all the question. Sorry.
I'm asking Hadir. She is studying political sciences, and she's wondering why the UN system does not put obligations on the countries that are behind the reasons of the climate change. That they take the responsibility of putting the solutions and be responsible for the solution. This is exactly what the convention is trying to do. But
yes, of course.
And I wanted you to make the answer. I want you to answer.
Yeah. Okay.
Because you are a professor, so I want to leave you there.
Well, professors are not wiser than others. But anyhow, the United Nations is not, unfortunately, international government and international government, and they don't have the power to enforce the decisions. So, as also Vanya explained before, the decisions are taken by consensus of all countries. And this, you understand, this is the answer. There is no way in which the many decisions taken are implemented. And the maximum you can have in the UN is name and shame for those who don't follow the decisions. So we are far away from having the conventions and decisions taken in the UN enforced in practice in all countries. I'm sorry, but this is the answer. The only actually international body, international union of countries that have obligatory legislation is the European Union. This is the only international, let's say, although it's not a federation, but still the European directives are obligatory for its membership.
I have also another question here, Michael, coming from Mrs. May Shafai. May is one of the very active journalists here in Egypt. And recently on the 15th and 16th of May, we established a network of which is called Egyptian Journalists for the Climate Change. It's a media network for Egyptian journalists preparing for the climate change. Her question is how this network of journalists could have a link with a Mediterranean, and I also want you to respond to this, with the Mediterranean journalist network and the Mediterranean.
This is the most easy and welcome thing. As you know, we have this circle of Mediterranean journalists for environment sustainable development, COMGEST. You just provide the list of journalists to become members, and in fact, this is we are in a phase of revitalizing this because every few years journalists move, and this is a good opportunity to revitalize that in view of the COP. We'll appreciate that. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Michael. طارق السباعي. I will come back to مه's question. هجي لك يا مها على سؤالك في الآخر، بس طارق السباعي. طارق اتفضل.
أشكرك دكتور عماد. شكرا دكتور عماد، شكرا أستاذ سكولوس، شكرا أرز، شكرا لجميع الحضور. حقيقة أنا مداخلتي تتعلق بموضوع التغير المناخي. احنا صراحة بدأنا نشعر جليا بهذا التغير في ال5 سنوات الأخيرة، خاصة فيما يتعلق بموضوع الأمطار التي بدأت تنحصر في أشهر محددة من السنة، ورغم منها بنفس المستوى العام لهذا الهطول. لذلك هذه بدأت عندنا وخاصة في المناطق ممكن دول البحر المتوسط أيضا يشعرون بهذا الأمر، إلا أنه هذه الأمور بصراحة بحاجة إلى معالجة بعمل حصاد مائي من خلال الثبوت في الأرض.
Excuse me, we are hearing at the same, sorry, to the translators, we hear at the same time the speaker and the interpreter, which is a big problem.
انتظر أخ طارق, wait طارق until we finish this problem. Technically, I think. Can you try again طارق? Can you try ممكن تاني طارق تبدأ تاني؟
أنا الصوت عندي واضح، الصوت عندي.
بس المشكلة اللي بيسمع الترجمة بيسمع الصوتين في نفس الوقت.
الصوت. على أي حال الموضوع اللي بحكي فيه هو موضوع التغير المناخي الحاصل والبدء من السنوات الأخيرة بموضوع بما يتعلق بموضوع الأمطار السنوية التي بدأت تنحصر في أشهر محددة من السنة، رغم أنه نفس كمية الأمطار أو معدل سقوط الأمطار هو واحد، وهذه هي مشكلة من المشاكل التي نعاني منها أيضا الآن في الزراعات البعلية والزراعات المطرية. لذلك أنا يعني وجهة نظري أن يكون هناك يعني توجه نحو حصاد مائي من خلال إنشاء السدود في مجاري الأودية والسيول لضبط هذه الأمطار وعدم الاستفادة منها بشكل جيد وإعادة توزيعها بشكل أفضل مما هو عليه حتى نستفيد من هذه الفترة. إضافة أنه هذه ممكن التجمعات المائية ممكن أن تساعد في عملية إعادة النظم الإيكولوجية في هذه المناطق بشكل أفضل مما عليه الآن، بدأت تفقد أو بدأت تفقد وضعها وإعادة تعافيها بشكل أفضل مما عليه الآن. هذه بالنسبة لمداخلتي، وأنا ما بدي أطول عليكم وأشكركم جميعا بهذا الصدد. شكرا لكم.
شكرا أخ طارق. سأترك هاخد فرصة كمان لسؤالين وبعدين نرجع للإجابة على سؤال حضرتك. في سؤال عندي هنا مكتوب. There is a question here coming in English. The question is coming from Pega Molana. To which extent is the youth involved in the climate change cause in Egypt as well as in the COP27 event itself? السؤال بحوله بالعربي عشان كمان عايز هيثم إذا كان موجود يرد على السؤال ده. بيسأل السؤال هو إلى أي مدى الشباب المصري يعني مهموم أو موجود داخل قضية التحضير للكوب وفي قضية تغير المناخ بشكل عام. هيثم تحب ترد؟
ايوه يا دكتور مع حضرتك.
اتفضل.
في الاول بس انا بشكر كل المتحدثين اللي اثرونا النهارده بكل المعلومات اللي طلعت. انا حابب بس ان انا اركز في السؤال اللي سيادتك بتعرضه اللي هو الخاص بمجموعه الشباب او بالشباب ومدى دمجهم في قضيه التغيرات المناخيه خاصه في الجامعات المصريه. عايز اقول ان المنتدى المصري للتنميه المستدامه اللي انا بتشرف اللي انا واحد من ضمن فريق العمل اللي شغال فيه، هو بيركز بشكل رئيسي على موضوع الجامعات والتشبيك مع الجامعات الحكومية والجامعات الخاصة والجامعات الدولية. بيكثف كتير من شغله في موضوع قضية التغيرات المناخية من خلال رفع الوعي وبناء القدرات وانطلاق المبادرات من خلال التعاون مع كل الشركاء. في الفترة الأخيرة أو في الاستعداد بتاعنا لقمة المناخ اللي إن شاء الله مصر هتستضيفها، إحنا مكثفين شغلنا بشكل كبير جدا مع الجامعات خاصة في قضية التوعية وانخراط الشباب في المبادرات وازاي ان هم نقدر نمكنهم ان هم ينفذوا مبادرات داخل الجامعات. وبنحاول ان احنا نطور الفكره نفسها اللي احنا بنخلي الجامعه كمركز خدمه للمجتمع، بحيث ان الجامعه تخرج بمبادرات تخدم الجامعه داخل الجامعه نفسها ومن خلال المجتمع المحيط بيها. فعشان كده كان لنا شغل كتير مع الجامعات وقدرنا ان احنا ننفذ كتير من المبادرات في الفتره اللي فاتت ديت. واحنا حاليا ومن خلال مبادره بلدنا التصنيف المناخي اللي بتنفذها جمعيه المكتب العربي للشباب والبيئه، ركن رئيسي من الاركان اللي احنا بنركز عليها هو الشغل مع الجامعات والمدارس. ده بصفه مختصره يعني عن الدور اللي احنا بنشتغل عليه في موضوع التغيرات المناخيه.
شكرا. Thank you very much هيثم. شكرا جزيلا. Michael, there is a question here for you I don't know if you see it or not, but it says, Dear Michael Skoulos, may I ask you please if this COP will be more simplified, the legal framework where startups with innovation ideas will be more easily to step in and help the global challenges. Michael, did you hear me?
Ahmad, very little. I have some problems. I cannot. I hear Arabic and English all mixed.
Okay, I will make it in English, and please stop the translation now. Dear Michael Skoulos, may I ask you please if this COP will be more simplified, the legal framework where startups with innovation ideas will be more easily to step in and help the global challenges?
Well, this is our hope, of course, but I don't know what the real conditions will be. Definitely, all countries and the UN itself emphasizes the importance of innovation and of capitalizing on the fast, let's say, shift from research to practice, and at the same time to become more elaborate, more analytic in our science to policy. So I expect that both these areas will be higher in the agenda. And these are also closely linked with the previous question about the role of youth. So in theory, I believe that this will be higher in the agenda. I don't know I have some fear, and I expressed that already, that under the geopolitical problems we have at this moment, a lot of attention is going to be directed to solutions that will be considered as transitional and as a bridge between the current situation and what actually was planned initially. This will be something that we try to avoid, we try to encourage, to focus and keep the pledges and promises and the momentum as it was at least in Glasgow. So one of the reasons we have these meetings is actually in order to collaborate at all levels in passing this message. Part of this message is also how fast we move into innovation and also the transfer of technologies from north to south as part of the support and solidarity. So yes, we hope.
Okay, thank you, Michael. There is a question that I would like to make the introduction for the answer, and I want you to confirm the answer. As we know, that climate change is going to worsen humanitarian crisis, create new ones, and that the Mediterranean Sea knows a lot of migration flows. The Mediterranean NGOs should advocate on environment-caused displacements at COP27. It could be great to work on a position paper about climate migrations, like the one, the one which was presented, the one that Harris presented. I personally, and Raed is very much involved in issues related to climate-induced displacement. I would really like to have a position paper that we can jointly doing it together, Mayo and Raed, on this issue. What do you think, Michael?
The answer is yes. It is a difficult issue, very difficult, and also politically charged, because it has been used by some countries, you know, for adding pressure to neighbors. So it is yes. The answer is yes. We cannot get into too many details in the recommendations without creating some kind of raising some kind of issues among and between countries of the region. So to a certain extent, yes, we don't want to put too many controversial issues on the table at this moment. We need to keep also all countries and the civil society of all countries as united as possible. So we'll remain on this part close to the UN position of principles, and will not try to give solutions in some of the controversies between countries of the region. There are.
Yeah, but let me just confirm one thing, Michael, that the question here and my answer was based on the environmental reasons for displacement and not the political or other thing. We are talking about environment, about drought that could lead.
Absolutely.
So I think we have already a position as Raed, and I think we can join hands together on that. Okay, there was a question here for Engineer Sharif, but I don't know if he's still with us. Engineer Sharif, are you still here? Engineer Sharif Al-Khayat from Kuwait. Wijdan, are you here from Kuwait? Because the question is related to the Gulf countries. Okay, so I sent him a message. Maybe he is he's busy with something else. But I don't see more questions. There's a recommendation coming from Mr. Mahmoud Al-Asawi. He's talking about a proposal to have a joint project between RAID and MIO to produce an Arabic version to the MIO site, and to have the leaflets and the statements coming from MIO to be translated into Arabic and to be, in this case, used by the media and by the different NGOs and the civil society. Michael.
This is something we agree and we want very much. It is a matter of resources, but this is in our program, and little by little we are shifting in having most of our publications also in Arabic, with your support also.
Okay, very general question coming. Let me start by another one. What is where the possibility of having a scientific platform that will bring the studies, research that have been done in the Mediterranean on climate? I think MEDIC could be the answer for, but anyway, so if there is a possibility to have this kind of collecting the research and the studies that were done on the issues on the topics of mitigation and adaptation in the Mediterranean.
I don't think that we can undertake this alone. There are at the moment several opportunities and centers. You mentioned Medeco already. There are some discussions about additional platforms where we participate in these discussions, and I will inform you if we come with an agreement. Definitely, this is of our interest, mostly for the science to policy interface, and this is something that on which we try to concentrate in some, at least, of these issues, like the ones mentioned before on wind power and the relationship also with biodiversity and the commitments in both for both conventions.
There are like 3 or 4 comments coming from different people. They are all actually from Egypt, talking about the success stories that we have from civil society organizations in different areas, especially when it comes to organic wastes, when it comes to adaptation in the field of agriculture, when it comes to the area of the adaptation in also with fishermen and fishing. So the idea here is how we are going to present, and if we will have the space to present these good examples and how we can replicate them and expand the knowledge of these small scale activities to be on a larger scale. I think I can answer this, and I will make it in Arabic. I hope it will not be again a problem for you, Michael. اللي احنا بنحاول نعمله في الجرين زون في المنطقة الخضراء ان احنا نلاقي مساحة كافية لعرض تجارب المجتمع المدني التي نجحت في مجال التخفيف والتكيف. وهناك ربما يكون هذا الدور يلعبه الMIO ورائد في الشهور المتبقية أو في الأسابيع القليلة عشان نقدر نجمع هذه التجارب، أن يكون عندنا فرصة لعرض التجارب اللي نفذها المجتمع المدني في القضايا المتعلقة بالتخفيف والتكيف على مستوى البحر المتوسط، ونكون هذه الأمثلة موجودة في المنطقة الخضراء. فنوعدكم بأن احنا هنشتغل على هذا المجال. What I'm saying, Michael, what I'm saying here, that what we are going to do together is we will try to make an inventory of many of the good examples and showcases on experiments and experiences of the civil society organizations in areas of mitigation and adaptation. If we have some good examples that we can present in the exhibition area in the green zone, and this could be also, maybe if we are lucky, we have a Mediterranean booth or Mediterranean pavilion, and in this case we can present and disseminate information and knowledge about the civil society success stories.
I see Mohammed Ftouhi is trying to actually take the floor.
Mohammed, take the floor, ya Mohammed. محمد تفضل تفضل.
شكرا جزيلا شكرا جزيلا دكتور عماد، شكرا جزيلا مايكل. تحية لكل الإخوة والأخوات المشاركين في هذا المنتدى الرائع. أنا أريد أن أحيي الMIO وكذلك رائد على هذه الفرصة التي أتيحت لنا من أجل هذا الحوار طبعا بين المجتمع المدني وما بين يعني الستيك هولدر الآخرين في إطار الإعداد للكوب 27. أنا إذا كان لي من اقتراح هو 3 أمور. أول شيء هو لازم يكون عندنا موقف واضح من خلال إصدار ستيتمنت أو بيان حول يعني الجهود للأسف التي لم تكن في المستوى، وهذا ما أكد عليه التقرير الأخير طبعا IPCC. فلازم يكون لنا يعني عبارات واضحة بالنسبة للقضايا التي تهم الادابتيشن، التي تهم الميتيجيشن، التي تهم التمويل، التي تهم نقل التكنولوجيا، خاصة في منطقتنا المتوسطية والمنطقة العربية. المسألة الثانية، أتمنى أن يكون لنا حضور قوي في شرم الشيخ وما بعد شرم الشيخ من خلال سايد ايفنت حول قضايا المياه، حول قضايا الغذاء، حول قضايا تدهور الموارد الطبيعية، لأن نحن بحاجة إلى إسماع صوتنا والتأثير في المفاوضات اللي تكون في شرم الشيخ. والنقطة الأخيرة، أتمنى من خلال MIO ورائد في إطار الشراكة والتعاون مع القطاعات الأخرى أن يكون لنا حضور حقيقي في هذه المحطة، في محطة شرم الشيخ. مرة أخرى شكرا على هذا الجهد، هذا الحوار. نحن نؤمن بأن بالحوار وبالتعاون ممكن أن نؤثر في السياسات ونوجه البرامج نحو إدماج قضايا طبعا حماية المناخ في السياسات وفي كل البرامج. شكرا لكم جزيلا.
شكرا جزيلا الأخ الدكتور محمد فتوحي. أرى الأخ يوسف نوري. يوسف نوري اتفضل. اعمل جيب الميكروفون.
Thank you محمد.
يوسف افتح المايك يا يوسف، افتح المايك. حل المايك يا يوسف. حل المايك يا يوسف. يوسف انت مش عارف تحل المايك يا
يوسف,
يوسف.
you have to unmute yourself, Yusuf Nouri.
I told him in Arabic.
اوكي
اوكي يوسف اتفضل.
good vous m'entendez؟ شكرا
oui.
شكرا. صباح النور. أود أن أبدأ أولا بشكر الأخوة المنظمين، يعني الشبكة العربية للبيئة ومنظمة الليميو على المبادرة الطيبة، وهي مبادرة ضرورية في ضوء ما يتعرض له العالم والمنطقة المتوسطية والعربية، خاصة فيما يتعلق بالتغيرات المناخية. أضم كذلك صوتي لما تدخل به الأخ طارق من العراق والدكتور فتوحي من المغرب، وأقول أن التغيرات المناخية أصبحت عندنا في جنوب المتوسط خاصة واقع، من خلال المشاكل المائية التي نتعرض لها، من خلال الأمطار، من خلال الرياح الرملية. وإذا المشاكل أصبح التغير المناخي واقع نعيشه، وبالتالي ليس من المزيد للتأكد على أنها ظاهرة قد تأتي، إنما هي حاصلة الآن. وكم أود أن نكون في هذه المناسبة، لا سيما أن المؤتمر يسير في الجنوب وفي منطقة عربية، فبودنا أن نتحدث بلغة واضحة ونحمل المسؤولية ونتحمل في نفس الوقت المسؤولية. وأبدأ ممكن بالمسؤولية في مسؤولية دول الجنوب. إذن في مسؤولية دول الجنوب والمجتمع المدني في الجنوب أن هنالك تقصير أو مشكل في الحوكمة. إذن هذا أعتبره نداء المزيد من الحوكمة لمجابهة التغيرات المناخية فيما يتعلق بالجنوب. لكن الجنوب هو من ضمن الدول التي تتعرض إلى مشكل لم تكن متسببة فيه. الذي تسبب في هذا هو الدول الصناعية. الدول الصناعية قررت أنها ستساند وتساعد الدول الفقيرة بصفة عامة ب 100 مليار، لكنها لم تفعل ذلك. إذا بدنا نحمل هذه الدول المسؤولية للإيفاء بما وعدت به. كذلك المشكل الذي تعاني منه دول الجنوب هو أنها أصبحت خاصة بعد جائحة كورونا عرضة للعديد من المشاكل، وأصبحت تطلب المزيد من القروض. هذه القروض أصبحت تذهب إلى مجالات أخرى ليس لمعالجة التغيرات المناخية adaptation وإلا مثلها. فكل القروض أو الأموال التي تحصل عليها أصبحت لخدمة الدين. وإذا هنالك ما نسميه لا ديت كليماتيك أو الدين المناخي للدول الصناعية تجاه الدول التي لم تتسبب في هذه الظاهرة. ومع كامل الأسف أن الدول الغنية تقرض الدول الفقيرة في عوض أن تعطيها يعني أموال لمساعدتها على مكافحة التغيرات المناخية، فهي تعطيها قروض، والقروض دائما تكون لفائدة من يعطي الأموال. فأصبحت دولنا، وهذا واقع، تعمل جاهدة لاسترجاع الديون التي أخذتها والقروض وفوائد الديون التي اقترضتها من الدول الغنية. إذن هذا ليس، ونحن نتحدث على لا جوستيس كليماتيك وعلى لا جوستيس يعني الحق البيئي لهذه الدول، فهذا غير مقبول وهذا لا يساعدنا. فنعطي مثال، في سنة 2019 71% من مجموعة التمويلات البيئية اللي أعطتها دول الشمال للجنوب كانت معناها في شكل قروض وليست في شكل إعانات.
يوسف الفكرة وصلت يا يوسف.
المفروض أن تكون في شكل إعانات. إذن بدنا أن تكون، وإحنا قلنا غلاسكو لم ينجح كما يجب، فبدنا تكون شرم الشيخ هي العمل الناجح وتحمل المسؤوليات. بدنا أن نصحح المفاهيم ونتحدث على المسؤولية المناخية. هنالك إمداد كليماتيك يعني دين مناخي ويجب أن نتعاون عليه نحن في الجنوب بالحوكمة لا سيما، وفي الشمال كذلك بإسداء تمويلات فعلا ليست قروض بفوائد، بحيث أصبح الأموال اللي تعطيها الدول
تاخذها مرة ثانية، تاخذها مرة أخرى.
لا 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 لا، هذه فكرة جديدة، فكرة أخرى. الدول الضعيفة
المقرضة
لا يا عماد أبش قل يعني التمويلات اللي تنفقها الدول الفقيرة في مكافحة التغيرات المناخية أصبحت 5 مرات إلا التمويلات الأموال التي ترجعها لفائدة القروض.
وصلت فكرتك يا يوسف. وصلت. خلينا لأن الوقت يعني ده
لا أريد أن
الوقت ده أهمنا. الوقت أهم.
أنا انتهيت، لكن هذه الفكرة العامة بدنا أن تكون التوصيات يعني تتحدث بواقع الواقع وباللغة التي يجب أن نتحدث بها حتى يتحمل كل مسؤوليته لمجابهة التغيرات المناخية، وهو يعني تحدي عالمي. وشكرا.
شكرا يوسف. Excuse me, Michael.
Thank you, Yusuf.
I will give the floor 1 minute. أستاذة فاطمة do you wanna أنت عايزة تاخدي الكلمة؟
Ahmad.
1 minute for Fatma, 1 minute for Fatma, 1 minute for Haitham. 1 minute. I will stop after 1 minute. اتفضلي يا أستاذة فاطمة.
أنا بالأول بشكر الجميع على هذا اللقاء الممتع الشيق.
خش في الموضوع على طول، خش في الموضوع. اتفضلي.
الموضوع الأول، أنا مسؤول إعلام وعلاقات عامة بوزارة الزراعة وكاتبة صحفية.
الموضوع اتفضلي يا أستاذة فاطمة.
وكاتبة صحفية ورئيس مجلس إدارة جمعية باري.
شكرا.
اول موضوع الخاص بالزراعه، احنا التغيرات المناخ اثرت على المحصول القمح، خليته قعد 25 يوم اثر على المحصول اللي بعده. واللي برضه للقطن قعد في الارض 25 يوم مش راضي يطلع. فعايزين تنبؤات تقول لنا على تغيرات المناخ مسبقه، دي بالنسبه للزراعه. اما بالنسبه للمجتمع المدني، في عندنا في الفيوم بحيرة قارون، كان كل القرى حواليها كلهم صيادين عايشين على الصيد. جه تلوث في البحيرة، أصبح كل الناس دي بدون عمل. اضطرت المرأة إن هي اللي تعمل. الراجل في البيت كبر في السن مش قادر يشتغل، فقعد في البيت ومراته هي اللي معيلة. كل القرى اللي حوالين البحيرة قاعدين في البيت والمرأة هي اللي شغالة، لأن هو كبر في السن مش عارف يشتغل. بالنسبة للشباب، احنا دربنا كجمعية، عملنا مبادرة ان احنا ندربهم. هنا في الفيوم في ارض كثيرة فيها ملوحة ما فيهاش مية، فقلنا نستغل الشباب نعلمه. في شجرة حمولة اسمها الجوجوبا، الشجرة دي ارميها في اي مكان، ارض مالحة ارض بيضاء، بيطلع منها زيت الديزل، بيطلع منها للطب وللتجميل. لما كل شاب نديله 5 فدادين يزرعهم في الاراضي البايظه المهمله اللي عامله تلوث، الشباب يزرعوها.
اشكرك
فلما يزرعوها خلاص البطاله ليه شغل. هنا نسبه البطاله كتيره جدا في الفيوم، لان ما فيش مصانع، ما فيش شغل، ما فيش اي حاجه. فانا
اشكرك على مشاركتك معانا.
ان المبادره بتاعتنا تطرح ليها للشباب، ان كل شاب ياخد 5 فدادين ويزرعهم في جوبا منهم الارض اللي ملوثه اللي كلها ملح اللي ما فيهاش ميه.
Unfortunately, I cannot hear
وجاي منها
anything.
زيت
بس يا مايكل
بيوصل سعره 400 جنيه.
نعم. شكرا يا استاذه فاطمه، الف شكر لحضرتك. استاذه مها، انت كنت عايزه تقولي حاجه بس لو سمحتي في نص دقيقه. استاذه مها.
ايوه، السلام عليكم.
وعليكم السلام. في نص دقيقه.
في نص دقيقه. انا مع كل اراء الزملاء اللي قالوا لازم نوحد موقفنا. هو الموقف واضح. الدول الكبيره زي الصين والهند والولايات المتحده هم اكبر مصدرين لغازات الاحتباس الحراري، فلازم دلوقتي الكوب 27 في مصر يركز على التنفيذ مش وعود. الوعود خلاص مش عايزين نسمعها تاني، احنا عايزين ننفذ على ارض الواقع. بالنسبه لمصر اولويه اولى المياه، قضيه المياه وسد النهضه وحصه مصر من نهر النيل، دي قضيه حياه او موت. الحاجه الثانيه الغابات وزراعه الغابات في مصر على مياه الصرف الصحي، دي اولويه اولى، ومصدات الرياح حتى نحافظ على الاراضي الزراعيه والانتاجيه ومجابهه الفقر. كل دوت ممكن اوفر في كميه المياه الري وازيد المحاصيل بعمل مصدات الرياح والاحزمه الواقيه في مصر. ما فيش مصدات رياح ولا احزمه في مصر كلها، فانا بناشد من خلال الكوب 27 توجه الاستثمارات لمصدات الرياح والاحزمه الواقيه، وحتى علاج لمنطقه الفيوم اللي اختي كانت بتتكلم عنها. ما فيش بديل غير الصرف الحيوي باستخدام الاشجار وليس الشجيرات وليس الجوجوبا. الاشجار الخشبيه هي التي يمكن ان تتخلص من المياه ورفع مستوى المياه في منطقه الفيوم والصحراء الغربيه بالكامل. حل هذه المشاكل فيها. الحاجه اللي بطلبها من حضرتك بس بسرعه، احنا عايزين نعرف ازاي نشارك في الكوب 27 واحنا من مصر مش عارفين نشارك ازاي، ولا عارفين تجي لنا الدعوات ازاي، ولا عارفين نشارك في الاحداث الجانبيه على هامش المنتدى، ولا حتى في الكوب واحنا من مصر. فيا ريت حضرتك تبعت لنا على الايميلات ازاي نشارك، ازاي نقدر ننضم. شكرا لحضرتك وشكرا على سعه صدرك.
من فضلك يا استاذه مها ومن فضلك يا استاذه فاطمه، اللي انتوا قلتوه دلوقتي احنا مسجلينه، بس برضو لو كتبتوه في صفحه واحده وبعتوه عشان نحطه في توصيات هذا الاجتماع، او احنا بنحط البيان بتاع هذا الاجتماع. هرد على الموضوع بتاع المشاركه. سعديه، انت عايزه تقولي حاجه من العراق؟
مساء الخير دكتور عماد، مساء الخير على الجميع.
عايزه تعمليها بالعربي ولا بالانجليزي يا سعديه؟ بالعربي ولا
بالعربي راح. شكرا جزيلا دكتور عماد على هذه المبادرة. حبيت أضيف أنه العراق هو من الدول أو يعني 5 دولة بالعالم من حيث الهشاشة للتغيرات المناخية، ويمكن حضراتكم تعرفون العواصف الغبارية اللي تجتاح العراق، والمتوقع حسب يعني المتنبئين بالاجواء انه راح يكون اغلب ايام السنه هي من يعني ايام متربه بالنسبه للعراق. حالات الاختناق والضغط على المستشفيات كانت على اشدها خلال هذه الفتره. واعتقد انه الموضوع هو ليس فقط موضوع يعني على مستوى وطني، وانما اعتقد يتطلب العمل على مستوى اقليمي، لانه العواصف اللي تجي للعراق هي تجي مو فقط مصدرها من العراق وانما مصدرها من خارج العراق، بالاضافه الى انه العراق يعاني من شحه المياه بسبب سياسات دول الجوار وبسبب بعض الامور السياسيه الاخرى. لذلك يتطلب التعاون الدول العربيه كلها في سبيل اسناد العراق للحصول على موارد المائيه وحقه في نهري دجلة والفرات، بالإضافة إلى العمل بشكل إقليمي لتشجير المنطقة والقضاء على ظاهرة العواصف الغبارية أو التقليل من آثارها قدر الإمكان. شكرا دكتور.
شكرا. قضية العواصف الغبارية قضية مهمة جدا، وبالذات في العراق وفي الكويت أيضا، يعني عملية فعلا محتاجين. أتمنى أن هيكون أيضا ده واحد من الحاجات اللي احنا نضعها. هيثم، أنت كنت آخر واحد هتقول حاجة، بس بسرعة يا هيثم.
حاضر يا فندم. هو بس في تعقيب صغير. هو الفكره كلها ان كل الكلام اللي اتقال مثلا او اللي تم التلميح ليه هو بيركز بشكل رئيسي على المكون الخاص بالطاقه. طبعا احنا عارفين ومدركين كلنا طبعا، واللي بنتعلمه من حضراتكم، ان طبعا الطاقه هي سبب رئيسي في موضوع الانبعاثات. بس طبعا في اكيد حاجات تانية موازيه بتاثر على التغيرات المناخيه، فلازم احنا كمجتمع مدني يكون لينا في الرؤيه بتاعتنا او الرؤيه اللي احنا هنقدمها في الطرح اللي هنقدمه في خلال الكوب ان شاء الله. فممكن لازم نكون بنركز على اداره المخلفات، بنركز على موضوع التعليم من اجل التنميه والسلامه وعلاقته بالتغيرات المناخيه، بنركز على استعاده النظم البيئيه ودمج المفاهيم زي الحلول القائمه على الطبيعه. لازم الحاجات دي كلها احنا نكون في الشغل اللي هنقدمه كمجتمع مدني في الطرح بتاعنا لازم برضه نكون بنركز فيه بجانب الشغل اللي شغال على موضوع الطاقه. شكرا.
شكرا ألف شكر يا هيثم. احنا كده we have taken all the notes from the different speakers, from the different participants. We had from Morocco, from Tunisia, from Iraq, from Jordan, from Egypt, from everywhere, and speakers
we
from
lost the sound.
لا فتوحي الساوند موجود يا محمد. I would like to give the floor to Michael to make his closing remarks. تفضل Michael.
Thank you, Ahmad. Thank you, Ahmad. Thank you, everybody. It was a very rich exchange of views after having all the critical information and assessments. This, as we said from the beginning, the objective of the meeting was to provide information from people who are important for the COP, for the organization of COP27. Second, to learn more and share the knowledge so that we are at the same level of understanding, we have the same level of understanding throughout. Third, to listen to some views which will actually shape our position for the meeting, and not only for the meeting, but also for the side events that we plan. I thank everybody for that, and let me try to say what I have noted. I start from the very, very last observation, which was also raised directly or indirectly by many. Approaching the COP27, we are not going to talk only about energy or even about direct impacts and adaptation. Of course, both of them will be in the heart of what we are discussing. But we need also to discuss on the tools and the frameworks for our for approaching solutions, for advancing solutions. So what it was also from the discussion clear here is that we also emphasize on governance, both international, regional, but also national and local, and the means to obtain, to have actually valid responses for the challenges. These include means, and these means are resources, financial resources, which may take different forms. Is not only aid, it is also investment. It is at the same time technology transfer, innovation, and at the same time expanded, really large-scale education and awareness raising at all levels, with the support also of authorities, not only national authorities, but local authorities, involving other partners, private and parliaments. We need to have decision makers closer to the issues and the public and us. We need at the same time to involve other civil society and other NGOs dealing with different issues than environment itself, including social, because the issue of migration, the issue of gender and youth are very important in tackling the environment and reducing the lack of justice across different, not only nations, but also gender and ages. We also need to get deeper in our analysis of green to green priorities, because we know that from our own organizations, although everybody is green, so it is all of us are for renewables and all of us are for protection of biodiversity. When it comes to design where and how to deal with this, we find many times disagreements even within our networks. So we need to find ways out for that in order to become more effective in proposing these kind of things to governments. I come out from this meeting stronger in the sense that we've heard from officials that they count on us. We are a unique part of the civil society in the world because we are from a north-south interface. It is a model. It is a model, our cooperation for so many years, with one voice, with variations, but with one voice. And I think that we have a unique opportunity in Egypt to make other parts of our bigger civil society community and NGO community to show how we can find joint language and joint priorities in order to deal with this huge issue. We need to be pragmatic. This doesn't mean that we should not keep our ambitions. We keep our ambitions, but we raise common sense arguments. And the common sense argument has to deal with this transition period and what is a danger, the diversion at this moment of a lot of the resources in securing natural gas alternative from, not Russian, but from other areas. So this is an issue that may puzzle many people and disorient many of the governments, even in this region. We need to elaborate further on that. And we also need to make absolutely sure that the governments at least keep their pledges made in Glasgow, not to deviate from, because they started already saying it's not feasible, the 1.5 degrees target, and also to make clear that civil society has decided and has the power to impose on governments the commitments through our power of vote. And this is important for everybody, every politician, to understand that we want the climate change high in the agenda, as was the case in recent elections in some countries. So it is important that we use the language also the politicians understand. It is important not for any particular parts of the society. We all fight for our children, our grandchildren, and for the children of everybody, those who fight for the environment and those who neglect the environment. It is absolutely our duty to make everybody to understand that we have a voice that has to be heard. And this is my conclusion. I think I feel the strength of all of you, and we are going to make our voice heard. So thank you very much. And Ahmad, for you to close.
Okay, thank you very much, Michael Skoulos. When we talked about this in mid-April, it was a big dream, and we know that we are going to have a lot of challenges, but we knew also that we are strong with with our members, we are strong with our connections, we are strong with our partners, we are strong with our staff and our teams in MIO and RIAD. And this is why I think we had a very successful meeting today. As a beginning, we still have less than 6 months to go. We already crossed.
A problem with the sound.
معلش ارفع عندك الفوليوم يا مايك يا فتوحي واقفل عشان انت بتقاطعني. So we still have more than 5 months to go, and I think this will be the beginning of a series of consultations that we have to. And let me say something in Arabic for my colleagues from the Arab countries. بشكركم شكرا جزيلا على مساهمتكم النهارده. عارف ان بعضكم بعتوا اسئله في النهايه لم نكن على نستطيع ان نرد عليها جميعا، لكن سنتواصل ويستمر التواصل فيما يتعلق بمشاركه المجتمع المدني في الكوب. احنا متصلين كرائد، متصلين مع كل الجهات المعنيه، وبنحاول قدر المستطاع ان احنا نوجد المشاركه لاكبر عدد ممكن. اول معلومه انه لا يوجد حاجه اسمها دعوه، المشاركات في الكوب لا تاتي بدعوه، ولكن بتكون كل جمعيه مسجله بتحاول انها تحضر وتوفر الموارد. احنا بنحاول نوجد الحاجتين، بنحاول ان احنا نوجد لكم المساحه المكانيه، ونحاول كمان نوجد التمويل اللي يساعدكم على الوصول. طبعا هيكون من الصعب ان احنا نودي كل الناس لان التكلفه عاليه جدا، لكن قدر المستطاع هنحاول يكون من المنصات في تمثيل جيد من المنصات في الكوب 27 ان شاء الله. مره اخرى بتوجه بالشكر لفريق العمل في رائد على كل ما قاموا به من تنظيم لهذا اللقاء. الشكر الجزيل لزملائنا في MIO. Very big thank you to Michael Skoulos, Anastasia, Harris, Danai, Olga, all the team in MIO for the wonderful organization they have done. I am sure we can do more. I am sure we have the spirit and we have the strength to do more. We have many things to present to our governments, to our countries, to our peoples. So we will continue doing this. A big thank you to all the speakers. We had from the League of Arab States, from UNEP, from the Union for the Mediterranean, from the Climate Champion, from Wolfgang and Vanya and Engineer Sharif and Harris, all the speakers. Thank you very much. And we will continue on the track. And we have many things to do and many things to continue doing. And I wish you a very good afternoon and evening. And thank you. This is the closing of it. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Ahmad. You are going to be informed, all of you, for the next event.
Yes, sure.
And thank you till then. Thank you all. And the commitment is here, and we will do it all together. We'll make it. We'll make it. Thank you.
Michael, until now we have 107 people. 107 people is still with us. We were at some point, we reached more than 170 something. This was a great gathering. Thank you very much. Shukran likum jami'an. Shukran and bye-bye.
Thanks, Ahmad and Dr. Skoulos. Thanks, Michael.
Thank you. Thank you.
Dr. Ahmad.
Thank you all.
شكرا دكتور
شكرا
مايكل.
Anastasia. Thank you, Anastasia. Thank you, Harris.
Thank you.